He's cool.
He's cool.
He's a little stinker.
Stinkus. Well, I also like it because I have a personal, one of my weird personal, nickname language things that I do.
Oh yeah, I like to do that.
So I would call someone a stinkus. Like, I would do that. So I like that. It works easily into my mind.
Well, let's go to the lake.
I turned on the YouTube.
We're on YouTube?
Yeah.
Hi,
Hi,
YouTube.
YouTube.
Hi, YouTube.
Connor, you've been so excited about this chapter for like a month.
Well, because
I
read it a while ago and got really pumped about it, and I just feel like we're bringing a lot of humor into the book now. You know, like when Chenille leaves them on the pier, and he actually has Oreb wave goodbye with his wing while screaming "Bye, girl." I just think that's so funny. Or like when he finally sees some fish heads and he jumps off Silk's shoulder and forgets to fly and just runs down the pier. I'm having a great time with it.
Oreb is Disney sidekick.
Yeah,
exactly.
These are all very Disney moments.
He's a talking animal.
We can get the Disney talk out of the way very early this time, though.
And I don't know. I think that the mystery is becoming more intriguing, but mostly I think it's the humor. I just think it's so funny now.
Imagine if you hadn't read anything about this book and you were just reading it now and you got to this chapter. You know what I mean? Like if you didn't know anything about the solar cycle or whatever, and you were just reading this book as it was, and you hadn't researched it. I feel like this is maybe where the book kind of starts to open up a little bit. It gets out of Myron and starts to explore the world, and I feel like Wolfe starts to let little bits of information that are interesting and maybe just more direct here.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like where maybe if I was reading it just casually, where I would start to realize this is like so much bigger than I realized before.
I think that the first time I read it, it was around here that I started to figure out what gods were. Really.
Yeah.
But yeah, go ahead.
It does feel like there's like it does definitely feel like it's getting
like with Silk's description of what's outside of the world. Too loud right now. That where he says it's surrounded by night. I mean, he's referenced that here or there, but I feel like it would be easy to kind of skip over depending on how closely you were reading. But I feel like when you get here, maybe you would start considering that, you know, what the world actually is a little bit closer. But I'm not sure. It's just a hypothetical thought experiment.
I keep forgetting. That's a really good point because I totally forgot that we don't necessarily know yet that the world is a ship.
No, I mean, if you were just given this book without any, you know, context or information and just told to read it, I'm curious what people would think, you know, without if like I would love to do a scientific experiment, you know, funded through a grant by Hopkins and just like follow 6 people reading this book and just hear their thoughts about it.
I was very disappointed because the first time I read this book, that was the only, like, I was looking up where to get it or something, and I saw a description in which it said they're in a world ship. And that was the only bit that got through, and I felt like it ruined a whole. I would have liked to have been able to try to figure that out.
Yeah, I feel like it's the most sellable kind of aspect of the book if you're trying to sell it to science fiction fans. And I don't know that science fiction fans are the ideal audience for this book, but yeah, I'm just curious. They blow that so hard, so ah, because it's so subtle how Wolf handles it. It's so subtle.
It's almost identical to like realizing that the towers in New Sun are.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Like you wouldn't realize that.
I don't think I knew before reading it. I don't think I did.
I did.
Did you figure it out?
Yeah. I think I probably texted you.
Oh.
I figured it out.
That's cool. Do you remember where?
No, it was a long time ago.
Yeah.
Well, that must have been a very satisfying feeling.
Well, Silk kind of like gets it, or it's like on the tip of his tongue, you know, that they're on a world ship. And he also kind of gets what's up with the counselors too, doesn't he? He like he gets almost all the way to realizing that they're way older than they should be.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything else in this? I feel like there must be other things in this chapter where he's like basically got the truth but doesn't realize it.
He realizes that Crane's a spy, but that's just true.
Well, Chenille told him that.
Oh, right. I totally forgot. I don't know why.
Well, but he also he makes up the idea that oh, maybe they're coming here to talk about a shrine to Scylla, and then they are. Yeah, there's many ways in which he accidentally knows what's going on because
I feel like this is
engineered for this moment.
There's somewhere in this chapter as well, following on your point, Ryan, where he just casually thinks about the first settlers coming into the city that was built for them. And I feel like that kind of language I hadn't seen before in the book. So, that specific. I forget where it is, so I'll keep my eye open as we discuss. But
so I have the actual first edition hardback of this book, and I had never looked inside of the dust jacket, at the flap info. Mm-hmm. And it's super it talks about how the world is star traveling and how it's in the traditional theme of the Generation Starship, right in the. It's interesting to see the copy, how they were essentially marketing at the time. And it's there's a quote about it being the storytelling being lucid and straightforward. Right? They were maybe trying to say look guys, this one's easier to read than New Sun. So,
it's a trick because it's not. It just seems like it's easier to read, but it's so much more confusing.
Well, they really kind of just lay out the surface level stuff, basically. They're the depiction of a whole world. Self-aware computer programs exist among squalor. Non-human creatures are capable of speech and intelligent thought. Robot guardians protect the wealthy. Strange weapons function in ways that seem to defy scientific principles. And the gods themselves have until recently been a demonstrable force in the world.
That is so unfair to the reader. That takes so much.
I don't know, maybe because this is the second volume. I would have to look,
okay.
I'd have to look at Nightside and see if it's a little bit cagier.
I wonder if there were meetings about this where Jean had to be told we're sorry, it's gonna be spoiled.
There's no way that they talked about this.
Yeah, I don't know how precious Gene is about his puzzle boxes, I
mean, I'm sure he would have held out some tiny hope that maybe this would be something the reader would figure out and not be told. But I also can't imagine him arguing once the publishers were sorry.
Let me look at Nightside.
In my fantasy of Gene Wolfe, he sends the book off to the publisher, and then when the publisher tries to talk to him about it, he's I don't care, I'm done. Like, do whatever ruin it however you're gonna.
Yeah.
That like rings true to me. There's something about that. He just seems so like, yeah, I don't know, I wrote a book. Oh,
Oh no!
Like it clearly is like very detailed and thoughtful, and he clearly like labored over it. But then he's just like, oh.
Well, here in
Oh, you think
Nightside,
so? Great.
in Nightside, in the flap, now Wolfe returns to science fiction with a mighty multi-volume mega novel of mystery, war, and revolution. The Book of the Long Sun, set on a world, the Whirl, existing inside a giant starship sent from Earth to colonize a distant planet. So it's there. It's just they're like out in the open. I don't know. I mean, I think since there is a tradition of generation ships in American science fiction in particular, and it's not surprising that Tor, a science fiction publisher, would be like, this is Gene Wolfe's generation ship novel, come on and check it out, you guys. So I don't know. I mean, I don't think that, because you kind of forget, like, as soon as you start reading it, you're like, you don't even think about the fact that it's on a generation ship until stuff starts sticking out its head.
Mm-hmm.
Be like, oh, right.
Well, there's little terms, Skyland, Shiprock.
Yeah, the Skylands were still pretty mysterious to me, even though I knew going into it was a generation ship thing, because I hadn't pictured it as being like, oh, the other side of the world's right there. And so I feel like it did take me a second to acclimate to what the Skylands were. And that was
the
pretty
other side
cool.
of the world is hundreds of miles away.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But you can see it.
Yeah, I hadn't imagined a world where you could see another part of it in the sky. That was like something I had to wrap my head around after seeing that word and hearing them described.
I mean, I guess knowing that it's a generation ship doesn't really, because maybe when you start reading, you're like, oh, this isn't on a ship. This is not on a ship as I understand it.
Right. Yeah, you don't immediately think like, oh, it's an O'Neill cylinder kind of.
Right. Yeah, like it doesn't launch into like, this is the place that you're on.
Right.
So it does kind of, like, I knew going into it that it was a generation ship, but I feel like, I don't know, seeing how that arrives is still really satisfying.
Yeah. Yeah, you just take for granted that it says that right on the book flap.
Right.
Like, it could be, you might realize that they're in space, if you were reading this for the first time in some kind of structure or something, but you wouldn't even think generation ship necessarily, and you certainly have no information to think generation ship sent to colonize a distant planet. Like, maybe that's like really specific.
Yeah, and maybe because, I mean, generally you have to market a novel to somebody who's only going to read it once, who you want them to buy it and read it at least the one time,
or at least.
And I feel like it being on a generation ship is sort of a key that unlocks a lot of what might otherwise be kind of impenetrable.
Yeah.
So they're like, hey, like, if you're struggling with this, just remember it's on a generation ship. And then you could be like, oh, okay. And that really focuses a lot of it for you.
Yeah.
I don't know. Although, I mean, we always talk about how you good, Ryan? In a crinkly time.
That's a good way to get one into like anything. Like, say you're trying to get them to watch a movie like Barry Lyndon or something, and they're like, oh, that seems so boring. You're like, but it's set in a generation ship.
Really? Barry Lyndon on a generation ship would be awesome. Are you kidding me?
I don't know why that popped into my head.
I want to see that movie.
Something
now.
Boring.
I mean, it could be. We don't know it's not.
There you go.
These characters don't, all of them don't know.
Well, I mean, we talk a lot about how the point of the book is not what happens.
Right.
Yeah. That's true. Even a spoiler isn't a spoiler.
Yeah. Well, but I mean, it would be fun to come to that realization along with Silk at the same speed, kind of thing. The way you're able to realize things with Severian, like with the Severian.
Yeah. Yeah, true.
But I would say that whatever was spoiled in this book is more than made up in the next book, Short Sun, where it doesn't matter what people tell you about that book. It doesn't matter that you've already read it. You don't know anything about it.
I'm so excited to read that book.
I started reading it, I don't remember when. I'm like a little over halfway through, and it's just like, it's really fucking weird. But I'm enjoying it a lot.
I've been reading about it in the companion thing, and I think there's so many things that I just had no idea about after reading it twice.
Does the companion cover Short Sun also?
Yeah, it's long and short.
Interesting.
Yeah. They're a little bit more tied together. Which I honestly found jarring at first, but I'm very excited about it now. Also, there's just so many moments in this book, in this chapter, that I really like. All these, like, the chapters trying to ignore that people are like kneeling down in front of Silk and praying to him as if he's a god while waiting for the bus. I think that's really hilarious. There's an awesome moment when they're sending the eagle after Yolar, where they don't know if the eagle's going to get him. And Musk holds Blood's hand, and Blood is so happy, and he doesn't want to show anybody. I thought that was adorable.
It really changes Blood. It like permanently changes Blood in my mind.
Yeah, you like, and that keeps growing. And there's evidence of it before this, that like Blood's a sweetheart inside, and that Musk
Mama's
is
boy.
Yeah. And Musk is like an evil rot that's killing him.
But also, there's a part in that section where Musk has to like intentionally affect this like cold tone or whatever. Like it's like a put on. Like his fucked up personality is like a put on. Like it's saying that he's had to like affect this tone since he was a kid.
Yeah, which I feel like implies that something bad happened to him as a kid, and this is his code.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
I interpret that a little differently.
Bad or whatever.
Yeah, I don't think that necessarily means that he's like, oh, I'm really a sweetheart, but I pretend to be mean. It's
yeah,
like,
I think that he's just
this is my like affect.
He's just
but
not.
It adds a layer, where it's not, you know.
He can't admit to himself.
Who's a dickhead experiences that. We just don't always see narrative from their point of view.
He can't admit to himself the way that he's actually fucked up. He knows he's fucked up. He has to make up a way that he's fucked up. And he's like, I'm acting fucked up, but that's just covering up how he's actually fucked up because he won't deal with that.
But I think it's also that in that moment, he's doing a similar thing to what Blood is doing because he actually is like in love with the birds, basically. And he's like really kind of like elated by it. But he can't show that.
Well, because he's in love with the death that the bird brings.
Yeah.
And that's upsetting.
And also, Blood's kind of his sugar daddy, right? So he can't really let Blood know that he's got affections elsewhere that are strong.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Or else he won't be able to pay for all these boys.
And also, they're both in the business where it's like you don't, you know, you got to be stone cold or whatever. Like it's
right.
Yeah.
Like Steve Austin.
Hell yeah.
That was a wrestling reference.
Thank you, Connor.
Thank you, Connor.
In my reading about Short Sun, there's a part in this chapter where they reference somebody seeing a chalk drawing of Silk, but apparently there's another version of Long Sun out there in the world of Long Sun.
Oh.
that actually has the chapter describe or has a passage describing Chenille doing it.
Is that Scleroderma's book?
It's something, yes, maybe, or it might be the one that actually that Nettle and Horn wrote, and this is an edited version.
A translation.
Yeah, there's just lots of versions of this book in the world of this book,
which makes sense.
Right.
and then it's cool to see. I was thinking about when Jen was saying that this is Bible study class, and how like there are parts of this book where the book is talking to itself, looking for the primary source, which reminds me a lot of like the Q source and the P source when people are trying to figure out the oldest version, like where the books of the Bible came from, kind of thing.
How did you hear about this passage of Chenille making the drawing?
Well, it's a thing they talk about in the Short Sun, and I remember them talking about it, but I was just looking through this, and there's a part where they talk about like, here's all the versions of these books.
Oh, neat.
Yeah. That are mentioned.
I like that. That's
This chapter reminds me a lot of Murder, She Wrote.
Yeah. Well, because this is getting more and more into that Chesterton detective priest, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's starting to feel more and more like that, quaint and Anglophilic.
Yeah.
like, I'll just give you all the information. You're just a kind soul. I'll just tell you everything.
Well,
That is how Murder, She Wrote works. She always talks to one person who just tells her everything she needs to know, like in the first 15 minutes of the episode.
While they drink sparkling water.
Right.
At a cafe.
Well, the woman that helps him, the government lady who tells him about the shrine and all that, she becomes possessed at one point. Did any of you get that?
During their conversation.
Yeah, I didn't get it either until it was pointed out to me. But Scylla possesses her because Scylla wants to send people to the lake to die, to be sacrificed to Scylla.
Cool. But they tell him not to go.
The couple tells him not to go. That's for
Right,
sure.
the couple, and that apparently is what when Koipu like wanders off the path and thinks that he's going to visit his uncle or whatever, it's because Scylla was trying to get him to jump into the lake and commit suicide.
Okay, I was thinking that had to be something else because there's just no way the heat did that.
Right. No, yeah, it's because they're becoming possessed and trying to sacrifice themselves to the goddess. Which I thought was wild. But I love that conversation in line at the DMV scene too. Everything about this book becomes funnier and funnier.
Well, in the opening pages, we get this description of the Oriate path, which maybe was kind of described before, but I'm still like a little bit unclear. Like I know he's referring to the length of the long sun, but like what other significance it has or how it's been come to be known as a path is a little confusing to me.
I feel like this is a slanted kind of reference to this thing that was popular in the 90s that I think we've since nobody believes anymore, but that Celtic people thought that the souls of the dead lived inside of the sun. And I feel like this is a similar kind of thing. You walk the road of the sun to get to Mainframe to be with the gods.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's just being influenced by all the Irish names that the angels have.
I think it fits together, what you've suggested. It makes sense. Just makes sense.
It's not true. I don't think the Celts really thought that the souls of the dead lived in the sun.
Oh, but I meant the path.
Yeah,
Makes
yeah.
sense.
But I think it's just a metaphor that developed within the religion of the.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any like technological significance to it.
Yeah.
Another
Oh,
really
there's a
good
reference in here. I was reading about how there's a bunch of indications that one part of the cosmological writings is the Aeneid. Oh, but no, it's the next chapter. There's a part where Remora calls his spies Anchises, which is a character from the Aeneid. I just thought it was interesting that they all seem to be worshiping the Aeneid in a way.
And that calls back to the book, the boat head, right, from New Sun. Isn't that an Aeneid story?
It's Theseus.
Yeah.
Is that in the Aeneid? I don't know. Jordan knows the Aeneid better than me.
What?
Do they talk about Theseus in the Aeneid?
Why do you say? Wait, why do you say that? I know.
I remember you being a fan of the Aeneid.
What? Oh, I think I was reading it a long time ago.
Yeah, all right.
Is Theseus mentioned in it? I don't know. I would, if I were to say that somebody here knows about the Aeneid, I would say it would be Ryan. That would be my guess.
I don't really know anything about Virgil. I just know Homer.
Yeah, I don't really read a lot of Roman writings. A little bit of Ovid, that's it.
Yeah.
Theseus is in the underworld in the Aeneid.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
Yeah, you're right. I was reading it a long time ago.
2011.
Theseus is destined to sit completely still for all eternity.
Damn, that sounds like me.
That's great.
Okay, another moment of comedy that I really like is when Chenille asks, like right before she goes away from Silk, and she asks, like, you love high, and then he says, I shouldn't. It isn't right. And a man in my position, an augur, has so little to offer any woman. It's just not what I would expect from a priest to answer that question. And it's it's so, I don't know, it's really wonderful. I feel like that his reason is that he's looking at it from her point of view. That's why he shouldn't love her, is because it's a bad deal for her.
Well, he's allowed to have girlfriends. Is he allowed to get married? Is he allowed? He's like allowed to do those things, right? It's just that he won't see gods if he does. Or is that not true?
I don't think that augurs. Okay, so I think it's like the early medieval church where like augurs aren't supposed to get married, but things have gotten corrupt enough that everybody knows that sometimes they have a little concubine, you know?
Okay. All right.
But like an innocent person would ignore that, is the impression that I get.
Yeah.
None of the
I
others seem married.
Him sort of like, he's starting to seeing Hyacinth is like the first thing that makes him be like, oh, I don't know. And he's like really, and when he thinks about Hyacinth, he doesn't necessarily think like, well, I don't get married or something. He's like, well, I could never give her anything. You know, it's like, he's thinking about it completely like unrealistically for what he knows. I feel like, yeah, like Hyacinth, like, is that Kypris is doing? That's like what Kypris wants to pull him away from the gods.
Well, Kypris just is programmed to like sex. Like that's just a part of her personality.
It's not
like
part of her big plan.
Huh?
It's not part of the plan.
I don't think that I don't think it needs to be. Like Silk is willing to work along with her because she's a goddess. She doesn't have to seduce him. And in fact, it seems like that's getting in the way a lot. I think she just earnestly enjoys sex.
Well,
I do think that
it has to be some god. It has to be some god's domain.
Right. But I think it's an interesting thing that she's trying to, a point that she's trying to make here, because like Silk likes High because Kypris is in High, and Kypris is also in Chenille, and Silk has admitted being attracted to her during this. Like she's trying to make the point that like if you're in love with High and would kiss High, you should kiss me now because we're both Kypris, even though she's been arguing against that for the whole previous chapter.
I think you could reverse that too, though, and say that if you like someone, Kypris is in them.
Sure, except that this book has a kind of more pataphoric thing going on, where like there is actually an entity called Kypris also that isn't necessarily in you just because you're in love with someone.
She's not saying both Chenille and Kypris are me. She's saying I'm both Chenille and Kypris.
Right. Yes.
I think if you lived on the world and you, like Auk, from Auk's point of view, it would go both ways. Like if you took the religion seriously, you would say that Kypris is at work anytime you feel attracted to somebody.
Right, but Kypris wouldn't perceive that, and Kypris is an actual being in this.
I don't think they're mutually exclusive.
I mean, a poet would say it.
Yeah, yeah.
And so would anyone at church.
Right, but Kypris wouldn't say it.
I mean, I feel like you're describing a documentary and not a book of fiction now.
I'm describing a book that has its own internal rules.
Yeah, I get
which this does.
I think I tend to agree with you, Connor. I mean, I think she would be happy to like take credit or whatever, but I don't think she or say that's you can attribute that to me or whatever. But I think she wouldn't say that is me.
I guess I don't think that Wolfe would toss out the like symbolic relationship. Okay. I think it's there, and it's important it's like a part of what makes gods gods.
I think that he already has tossed it out. I think that he's the outsider is the numinous god. The outsider is the god who works in the way that you're describing. The gods of Mainframe are computer infomorphs backed up of people from Typhon's court.
Okay, how about coming at it this way? All of these rules that Wolfe has created are derived from the actual relationship of human beings from our world to gods. Like he didn't build it all up like without reference to this other phenomenon, which is like our experience with gods, which is when you're attracted to someone, Venus is at work.
But that doesn't mean that but just because they're related and kind of like referencing back to that doesn't mean that they function in the exact same way.
I just think that you can't, I don't know, I don't think it's irrelevant. Like, I think what Wolfe is inspired by is a thing in our world that is mysterious, and his style is taking those things from our world and then creating explanations for them that are more like grounded in material knowledge.
But why can't you have both things? Why can't you have both?
That's what I'm saying.
And the symbolic and the material, but the symbolic is it's like psychological. It's like
Yeah.
people are always, people are attributing all kinds of things to all of the gods because that's what they do. But then there is also this like technical, logistical, like material thing that's happening to separate things. Which Connor's talking about Kyprus's experience. And you're talking about other people's experience too, right?
I guess
when there isn't a physical, like practical, real world kind of component to a god, everybody's subjective experience of them is valid. But when there is a computer program that is self-aware and can tell you what its awareness is, your interpretation of that god is going to take a second seat to what it actually is, which is not a god. I think one of the important things about this book is that there is only one actual god in it. It is the outsider. The rest of the gods are computer programs, and they're not actually gods. I mean, and they're pushing the limits of what that is because they can overwrite your brain. But that's not a numinous god thing. That is a biophysical thing when they do that, I think. I think that the ontology you're describing does exist in this book, but only in conjunction with the outsider. Because I think Eugene Wolfe is decidedly not pagan.
And yet he has written this whole book that really romanticizes the worship of the classical planets.
Well, I mean, you don't have to be pagan to recognize the significance of the planets. And I mean, in My Goddess, Robert Graves talks about how monotheism naturally, and I mean, not that this is archaeological or anthropological at all, but he talks about how the one grows out of and is they're part of each other. But also Robert Graves, and I mean, I'm not even saying that I agree with this stance, but they're still, Robert Graves is British enough that at the end of the day, he's saying all of these people that are talking about different gods are really only talking about various manifestations of the one true God. And I think Gene Wolfe is also saying that. At his heart, Gene Wolfe believes in only one God, and other gods are just that God appearing in different forms. And it's not even because the God's doing it, it's because the poet's experience of the God is what causes the God to seem different to that poet in that moment. I think.
Yeah, I think I missed the early part of the conversation because I was just kind of fussing around in my house a little bit. But was there any question as to whether or not the gods that Silk worships, whether they were synthetic or like actually like also literally had qualities of gods?
Well, Ryan's proposal is that Kyprus, it seems to me that he's saying that the Kyprus that like is living in Chenille right now is present whenever people are in love.
Okay. Yeah,
because that's what the people in the world would believe, or a religious person in the world would believe.
But they don't know an important part of what's going on.
But then I guess
they are wrong.
We still have the question about, well, then why does anyone fall in love except when Kypris is like possessing them? Like why would you fall in?
It seems like there. I mean, depending on how you want to take it, like there's a version of Kypris that exists, whenever people are in love, because that's how
They think of it.
that kind of thing works. Yeah, like there's a sort of like self-realization of that idea, but there's also a sort of like data-based Kypris that exists kind of separately from the symbolic one.
It has no access to the symbolic one.
Because the symbolic one's created by the people, and Kypris, the Kypris that Silk is interacting with, is, software. But a different, I don't know. I mean, I think you could probably go down. I think you can make a strong argument either way. But I think that there is a sort of like convenient reality in the novel of Kypris existing in a way that's external to this sort of symbolic, abstracted meaning of Kypris that people use and carry around with them.
I guess I think about New Sun and about like things I sort of learned in New Sun where involving Severian having other people inside him, and what I guess I took from that, like Wolfe's feeling like Wolfe has beliefs that like you take a person inside of you when you know someone, and then they're at work inside of you, and it's not the exact same person, but it's not separate from that person either.
Right, but Wolfe had a biochemical metaphor of like I think that Wolfe thinks that that's how socialization works in our world, but in that book he made a metaphorical sci-fi process to represent that, which actually you can take the biochemistry of a person into your body and their personality is written into your mind, like the brain of it, like that. There's no magic.
Right, but surely Wolfe doesn't believe that's what happens in our world. I feel like that's
correct,
what happens
but
in
these
the
books are
understanding.
happening in these books.
Yeah, I just don't see why that has to mean that that's what's happening in the book. It's a book.
I'm not saying that. I mean, I'm saying that Wolfe is thinking about these things. These things are inspiring Wolfe, and like part of I think what these books are about is about our world and about what we experience.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know.
And-
I feel like there's been a strange veering into Aramini territory where there's like a material answer, and that's what this is about.
I mean, I think that in this case, there's a metaphor that the book represents, but that is not what is actually happening in the book. I think that if the plot and the characters of the book give us rules for what's going on in this world, and though they represent what's happening in our world, like what is happening in our world isn't necessarily what is going on when those rules are happening. A material, physical thing for these characters is what's happening.
And also, I would say that just because there's like a material explanation for something in the book doesn't mean there's no mystery in the book. Like, doesn't mean there's a material explanation for like everything. Like, I think it's okay to have material understandings of like certain things that are happening in the book without going full Aramini. Like, there's a material explanation for every single thing.
I think in the last chapter, Kypris explains to her, tries very hard to explain herself. Like, look, I'm not a god. I don't manifest when you're in love. I'm a person whose mind is backed up on a computer, but I'm a normal person. And then when Silk just can't understand that, she lets him continue to believe that she's a god. But she herself says, like, what you think that I am, I'm not that. I can't explain to you what's happening without lying. I knew that you can understand what's happening if I lie to you, but that's a lie. That's not what I am, is what Kypris says. It seems to me.
Which also doesn't mean that if you're a person living in that world and you fall in love, you can't, like, you don't necessarily attribute that to Kypris. Like, you can totally attribute that to Kypris. Like, they're both happening, but they're not, it's like two different things that are happening. And I think it seems like that's fine.
Yeah. Yeah, the Venus that we experience and that does manifest when we're in love, that totally manifests in their world when they're in love and whatnot. However, there is also a character in the book that is a computer program named Kypris that is separate from that, transcendence personification of people's love.
It would be like if you wrote a computer program and you just named it Kypris as a tribute, but that computer program came before the actual God form. Cool.
The computer programs are codifications of patterns that exist in people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that Kypris is more than what Kypris says or even thinks Kypris is. Like, Kypris claiming to be a normal person is funny because the person is dead.
Mm.
So Kypris is not a normal person. Kypris is something more than a person. It's something that's outlived the person.
Correct.
And has changed since the person has died and continues to change.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
I mean, as much as she is changing less than a normal living person is changing. She is codified. Codified stuff doesn't change.
right.
Well, but she's always like, she adds bits of the other people to herself, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
They're
there is
bugs.
certain
She's got
thing.
bugs.
Like,
But like,
I think
she doesn't
there's
grow.
a Venus behind Kypris. That Kypris is like the way that Venus is expressed specifically in this place and time. But that there's a bigger energy behind that is, I guess, like what you're saying is like an expression of the outsider.
Yeah, that would be the outsider, right?
Okay. All
Yeah.
right.
I'm curious to know if there's any action in the chat on it.
No.
I dig what you're throwing down. I think you're describing this really well. Yeah.
Like,
I don't
why
think
do
anyone
people?
here would disagree with that.
Yeah, like Kypris is a computer program, but why do people behave in ways that are like Kyprisy? Why is the experience of Kypris happen even when Kypris isn't there? And I think it's because Kypris is
when
just
does
like
that happen? When
why
does
does
that?
Kypris
anytime someone
exist
falls
as
in
a
love
computer
and
program?
Kypris
No,
isn't there.
Anytime that someone falls in love, they're experiencing a different thing than the computer program of Kypris.
I
Those are two
think
different
that what
things.
I think what Kypris is like the way that your culture tells you love works, or that love is the things that are acceptable in love, or the things the things that revolve around the way that force crystallizes and like calcifies and becomes a specific thing that's a little different than how it goes down in another city or another time.
That's not what the computer program of Kypris is, though.
Yeah, now you're throwing me off, Ryan. Because I thought you were saying that you thought that Kypris was a manifestation of sort of the planetary force of love of Venus, right? It was just like that particular manifestation in the world. But now you're bringing like a society's definition of love into it.
Well, because that's what I think the difference between Venus and Kypris is I think Kypris is like a hardened specific version of Venus for a specific people.
Yeah, I
Okay.
mean,
Yeah. Okay.
Kypris is a person. I mean, this is interesting because I also know that you don't like euhemerist interpretation of myths, and this is very much the metaphor of this is very euhemerist in that like this god was a human being at one point.
But that doesn't explain the god.
Right, because the god that you're trying to explain is a different thing than what Kypris is. Like the computer program Kypris isn't going to explain the god of love because it's not that god. They're two separate things. Kypris could experience the god of love, but Kypris is a computer program that was once a human being.
Could we say that Kypris is like I guess like imposter's the wrong word, but it's kind of the right word.
It's sort of like a representation. It's like as if that this is what I was saying earlier. It's like if you wrote a computer program and you named it after Venus or something because of some qualities that it had, but that you wrote that program before Venus was an idea. So it's like this. There's like this Kypris, the god form thing, is based on this computer program person, and in so becoming this abstracted like social idea of what that computer person is actually becomes this kind of like god, like an actual god that exists in everyone when they feel love or whatever. And in so doing kind of makes the program like a shallower version of that, but only because it's like, you know, it's like if you saw a 2D picture of something and then you made a sculpture of it, and that 2D picture still exists. Like Kypris, the computer program still exists, but there's also this like social aspect, this version of Kypris that exists, but in a, you know, like an abstract, like thought form sense, as opposed to a computer program.
Yeah, and well, something like there's specific things about Kypris. Like other gods don't make people horny, just Kypris does. And like we don't see.
Well, I don't think that we have any reason to say that.
I mean, I think that if Wolfe thought it was important for us to think other gods could make people horny or have like a Venus presence, that I think he would have given us a clue to that.
I mean, Kypris makes horny people because it was a horny person who was downloaded to be her.
Okay, if Kypris is a normal person, then horniness is going to be one part of them in a whole total. But
which it is.
But that is the like. But the things that happen with Kypris are all constellate around like a particular archetype. Like they all bring Venus energy.
But that I don't. But Kypris herself says that like that's not all I am. Like, yeah, we're only looking at the Venus-y parts of her.
We're only ever shown Venus-y parts
herself
of her, and
says
we're not
that there's
shown
more.
Any other god that has Venus-y parts.
But Kypris herself says like you're not looking at all of me. She tells us like there's more of her than what's getting into this story. Like she is being diminished when you think of only of her in only that way. Even in her actions, she doesn't only do Venus-y things in this. You know, she does very schemy things with Silk, which Venus doesn't scheme. She's not a schemer. She's not a schemer. She's very blatant and outright.
No, she said
Mercury's a schemer.
She sneaks around Hephaestus's back.
And sneak. She just does it.
I mean, she doesn't do it when he's there. She does it when he's gone.
And she gets caught. She's not scheming. She does. That's not what she does. In fact, usually in myths, Venus is running away. But to go back, like Kypris is a full human being. And she says that repeatedly. She's not only Venus-y things, it's just that the author is only looking at the Venus-y things about her.
If she's a full human being, then why would she know?
What?
I mean, a full human being's not a reliable narrator as far as what the full extent or like of their being.
Well, I mean, we could doubt that this entire book is happening, and it's just the word "the" printed over and over again.
I don't think that is anything like what I'm saying. I'm saying that if Kypris is a person, then why would Kypris know definitively what they are? I mean, isn't that a constant theme in Wolfe, that people don't understand everything that they are? Or normal people don't?
I guess, man, I don't understand what you're doing.
I don't understand why it's making you so mad. I guess I'm looking for a
I'm not
meaning.
mad. I'm confused. I don't understand what you're doing.
No, Ryan's mad. You two are dancing along the head of a pin, like around. Like this isn't. Is this one of those classic like old school Wolfpack moments where it has the appearance of a debate, but it's like no one's disagreeing, or like it's not clear what the argument is anymore.
Old school Wolfpack.
I don't know. I have no inroad into this. Sorry, I got nothing.
I guess I think
you're
that
making
Wolfe
interesting points, though.
I
Ryan.
think Wolfe is a little pagan. I think he wants to I think he wants to like reclaim the really useful stuff about classical knowledge and belief, and like find a way to bring it into his own faith.
Connor, are you showing us your ballet slipper?
I'm just playing with something.
It's a ballet slipper.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what more to say about this, I guess.
Well, we, as always, I'm sure will come back up a million times, so we can talk about other parts of the chapter for a while.
Wait, just wait, really quick. Where did this start? Like, what was Ryan? I'm looking at you. Like, what essential point? Because I feel like you're trying to dig at something here, and I want to hear you out. And you said a lot of interesting things. I just kind of, lost. I became lost from the path. I lost my way. I need a Virgil.
I guess it's because I said that, even when Kypris isn't literally possessing someone, like Kypris is active whenever you like we were saying, Silk likes Chenille because Kypris is in her, and I was saying there's also an element of because he likes her, Kypris is in her. Like that's the
and
way.
I think that's two different things.
Yeah. Okay. That's the debate. Right
Okay,
there.
and I would say like if there's a real key to the story, like of what's really happening in this book, then yeah, Kypris is a computer program. But I don't think that Wolfe is uninterested in how that relates to our experience with God.
Right, one is a metaphor for the other. One symbolizes the other.
Like Wolfe is trying to take what we experience, and then I feel like it's this fun thing for him to go, well, we don't believe in this stuff anymore, but it's not incompatible with what we do believe. We could find our way back to it very easily with things that we do believe. But the reason he wants to get back to it, I think, is interesting, and I feel like that's part of why he writes this book, is because it's like worth trying to get back to that stuff. Like I can hardly think of a better book for selling paganism than Long Sun.
Yeah, I don't feel that.
I mean, I've never read like a book that wasn't explicitly like nonfiction that made paganism seem more attractive. That's been like written in this century.
Seems
think
like
that's
more of a
interesting.
critique of paganism to me.
Yeah.
It's
I
a
think that
loving
too.
critique. It's like a critique from
Sure.
someone that definitely
Yeah.
doesn't hate it.
But also, I feel like it's just making a distinction. I mean, it's making a distinction because you do have these two different forms of gods in the book. There's a concrete distinction there. There's the like computer gods and the outsider. They're different on purpose. They're both in the book on purpose. And it doesn't, because the outsider's there is not saying that the computer gods don't serve like a social function, aren't like, you know, useful for like categorizing experience or all of this, but it's different from what the outsider is. So it's not,
Yeah.
I don't think it necessarily has to be, I think the idea that it's like pro or con, like for or against paganism is like a little goofy. Like it's just describing functions. Like, you know, it's like science fiction is, good science fiction is descriptive of our world. That's why we read it. That's why we like it. And it's saying there's two different things that humans do. There's like two different types of relationships you can have with gods.
Yeah, and the outsider is like an umbrella. All of the other stuff falls under the outsider.
Right, which I think goes perfectly back to
If I may,
or what Connor was saying about like graves and the many and the one being like related to each other. Or whatever.
Yeah, I guess it sounds maybe. I mean, like the gods are imposters, but the organization of human activity into specific archetypes, and these specific archetypes is not like a lark. You know, like these gods are serving the outsider's purpose.
But everything serves the outsider's purpose, you know?
Yeah.
So sure.
Yeah. So it's not like they're random people who like have random qualities that have ended up becoming a god. Like,
yeah, and this is where I'm gonna disagree with you a bit. I do think that it is like that.
But it's sort of a hybrid. It's like, you know, it's like how we, as our group, divvy up the planets or whatever. We're both people, and then like regular people, total freaks or whatever. But we're both like individual people with personalities, and we take on, like, we assume these like symbols in reference to the group or whatever. I just think, like, I just don't get what this nitpicky shit is about. Like, I don't see why
I don't think it's
can't
nitpicky.
have both. Like, it's I think like we know what they are. Like, they were people whose personalities got encoded into the machine mind, and they also are like, they divvied up, like there's a whole section where they go into it, like, so and so had this kind of personality, so we gave them, like, you know, the god of whatever, and this guy had this personality, and the Kypris was the mistress, so she's the goddess of love. And there's, you know, it's like they're both. They were people whose personalities got encoded into mainframe, and also they are used symbolically. And I think, you know, it's like, you know, they take on those attributes or whatever.
Those specific attributes.
Yeah.
Those attributes are projected onto them.
Yes, but also they kind of like, I mean, like the we can agree that the gods, the mainframe gods, are self-aware about their godhood in like the way they function in the society, right? I mean, they know Kypris knows she's like the goddess of love to those people, and I think that they like, you know, I wouldn't say that they like. I think that they also they know that that's the function that they're serving, so they also project them, which is not to say that Kypris is Venus or whatever, but like Kypris knows that she's functioning as that within the society. Like she's self-aware about how the gods function in the society, right?
I think so. Yes.
They know what they're doing. They know what, they know that people think of them as gods, but they're...
This is important, I think. These gods have ego. The
Yes.
Venus that Ryan's talking about, there's no ego component to that.
Right.
That's
why I'm
the
saying
difference.
Kypris
There's an
is
ego
not
to these beings.
That's why I'm saying Kypris is not Venus, but Kypris might like project an image of like that kind of attribute because she knows that that's how she's like considered in the society.
She takes on that archetype.
But it doesn't make her literally Venus. Like she's
Right.
not literally Venus because she is a person whose personality, like she's a person with a personality. I mean, she's an AI version of a person. But it's the same as like when we are like, when we take on planets within the group. I think it's like a really similar thing. I think it's like a really good, easy way to consider it. Like when I'm saying like, okay, I'm gonna be Mercury now or whatever. It's like, I mean, it's pretty simple how it works. To me, it seems like pretty simple.
So can Kypris appear and not make anyone fall in love and not make anyone horny if she so chooses? Or is the program, like, is the nature of the program, like when it shows up, people are going to get horny, people are going to fall in love? Or does that not happen until she chooses it?
I mean, I feel like that's a complicated question.
That's also, to me, a separate question than
Sure.
this, what we've been talking about.
I mean,
Okay,
Like,
I'm not trying
it's
to
not the
win
same
any
question.
argument. I'm just saying, like, the things that occurred to me in attempting to find out the meaning of the book and why
I think
Wolfe
that's
wrote it.
what we're all doing.
Yeah,
So
I'm not arguing
the whole
with anyone.
congregation saw Kypris the day before, right? So,
Well, no, they did. Only
Everyone-
virgins see her.
well, they experienced her.
They experience
Did everyone
like
get
the
horny? Did everyone
lights.
in the church get horny?
no.
The
Well,
sacrifice?
my
Did they all
quest-
fuck? I don't think so.
But what about the people that saw her? Did they have a love? Did they all have a love experience of some kind?
I don't think they
I don't
said.
know if we can really answer that.
Yeah, we can.
I mean, like, Silk doesn't feel horny when he's seeing Kypris in the window.
That's
And
true.
Silk feels horny when Kypris tries to attract him.
Mint is just like overcome with awe. She doesn't get horny or
Well, right, but Kypris isn't just horniness; she's love. So it's like horniness is part of the mix, but it doesn't. It's not the only thing that she is. Right?
I would
mean-
say that Venus isn't sex.
Right.
But sex? No, she's not just sex. But sex is in
She's
her
not
domain.
sex at all.
Well, then who is?
Mars.
Also, this isn't Venus.
It's not
Right.
Venus. Also, yes.
Right, but isn't Kypris a goddess of love? Isn't she called that?
Right, but this is a code name that somebody picked.
Okay.
Correct.
Like the Kypris that is a character in this book doesn't have to follow the rules of what Venus is.
No, I don't think that she does. I guess I'm just thinking of like what's the relationship in Wolfe's mind of these things.
I think that the Kypris in this book has the same relationship to the Venus god that we do. Yeah. Like, she's a transhuman person, but she has the same relationship to Venus that we do. Like, when she is written into somebody's mind, they experience her hypersexualization because that's part of her that's being written into them. She also is skilled at seduction, so she can make other people horny around her in that way. Is what it seems to me.
Anyway, you want to talk about a different part of the book?
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm not going to say anything next. I don't know what you're waiting for.
That's it.
Well, let's talk about Yolar then.
Yeah, Yolar.
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 Oh, there's 2 Yolar names in the group today.
Yeah, I saw Jen's, and I thought that kind of looked like bipolar.
The flyers are the part of the book that I wish I knew more about the most.
I know.
I feel we
God.
just get like such a small taste of what is clearly a crazy thing.
Well, it makes sense because that's what's up with the druids.
Yeah, that's true.
We're not allowed to know.
That's true. We're not allowed to.
We have to make our own version.
But especially their family relationships.
Glad to have 3 wives because he's so near the ideal.
Well, like there's almost a Mormonism to it of like we need to make the best versions of ourselves. As many like if you got good genes, you got more wives, you make more kids. It creeps me out. I don't like the Mormons. I don't like that part of the Mormons.
But they're specifically, breeding for like
Jockeys.
being light bone and yeah.
Yeah, everything they're describing. I feel like they're describing racehorse jockeys.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
We figured out it's like a jetpack, right? He's like wearing some kind of like jetpack with wings.
I think it's like the Marvel Cinematic Universe's Falcon.
I haven't watched that. Anything with the Falcon.
It's a guy with a backpack with wings.
Okay.
He's got struts, right?
Yeah, it seems very kite-like, the wings.
Yeah,
is
I'm
the eagle
picturing just solid wings and then just a propulsion pack.
Yeah.
Just
So there's a little
gliding
bit of a
around
hang
there.
glidery aspect to it.
Yeah,
Like
they're
he's-
not like
He's got
flapping.
something to hold, I think, yeah? Like you do in a hang glider?
That would make sense to me. I don't remember hearing a description of that, but that would make sense.
I don't know.
He's a propulsion module.
Yeah, he talks about thrust and instruments.
I guess I pictured a dude on a hang glider with a backpack that has an engine in it.
Yeah,
But it's also the kind of thing, like he's able to slip out of it when it breaks, he jumps out of it and then is able to like spread his body out to slow his fall before he hits the water. So it can't, it's a thing that he can just go slick to get out of, I guess.
It says that he's got a flight suit, so he talks about wings and flight suits and instruments and propulsion modules. So like he's wearing some kind of, they make those wingsuit things.
Yeah.
Like the flying squirrel thing?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
my assumption is that he's got something kind of like that, but he's also got wings that he's able to ditch.
Oh, yeah, all right.
Because
That makes sense.
just because they're sort of like listed as separate things here, and the instruments and propulsion modules being separate also. It's some kind of rig. He's in a rig.
Yeah, I'm very excited to read the fourth book again to get the whole going to mainframe bit, because I don't remember that very well at all.
Same.
And later on, when the Trivaganti are going up against that whole squad of these people, I feel like there's weird interpersonal relationships going on in that. There's a whole story of these people that I really wish was written. They're so confusing.
It's weird what details we do get. Like,
Yeah.
why does Wolfe even bother? Like,
Yeah, that's a good point. Why are these in what I don't know what purpose the flyers serve in this story.
Yeah, it's really good.
like it's just so slight. It's just such an odd little detail to toss in there.
Yeah, it is.
I mean,
This odd little bit of world
the,
building.
He had the image of people hunting an angel.
Yeah.
And was like, this image belongs in this world.
Yeah, so I just feel like it's almost too literal though within a Wolfe universe for this to quite equate to angels.
They
Although I
do
definitely
have some
agree
kind of
with like the look of that.
Regarding the
Sorry, Jen?
sun, right? I think they're like mechanics who work on who help the long sun work properly.
Isn't mainframe? Don't they like directly report to mainframe? Don't they have a closer relationship to mainframe than terrestrial people?
So.
I don't understand how they move the plot forward, I guess is what I mean to say. Yeah. I understand their mechanics in the world, but why do we interact with them?
Is it part of the theme of religion kind of falling apart in a world that's like doesn't understand its own religion? That like sort of in the way that the society is falling apart in different ways that we can see that this is like a spiritual version of that like people are, rather than being like inspired or mystified by the angels, they're like, okay, how would we solve the problem of bringing one down? This like sort of reflects a spiritual like denigration and disintegration of this world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like a people that hunts angels, it like scientifically and strategically is like a people in trouble.
I suppose so.
Or it's like, I mean, it's kind of a modern apocalyptic image.
Here's an interesting thing. Ever since the God Rebellion cut the communication cable, they have also flown messages from the East Pole to the West Pole. I wonder what that is about. Because mainframe's only at one pole, right?
Yeah, mainframe is the East Pole.
So who are they flying messages to at the other pole? I don't know. This could be answered later on. I don't remember the last two books that well at all at this point.
Nobody in the chat today? What the hell? We need these people.
It's a really weird day. There was a violent knife fight outside my house last night. It was really scary.
Jesus.
Really?
Well, actually, let me take out the word violent. There was two men screaming and a knife was shown. And they did it for a very long time. I don't think there actually was any violence. I was just freaked out by it.
Yeah, we were. I was on a call with Aaron while that happened, and
Okay.
he was mostly just like, "Oh, I hate those guys. Let's see what happens."
Yeah. It was just really creepy because I had only shown up like an hour beforehand, and I was like, "Oh, it's so quiet around here."
Oh no.
And then, like, it was crazy because there's a club around the corner now, and it was crazy how quickly it suddenly was like two men screaming, "Why don't you put down that knife?"
On the is it the club and where Odell's used to be? Is that open now?
The North Avenue Inn.
Yeah.
It was once the place next to Pearson's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dang, they're open?
Mm-hmm.
What?
They're bumping all night long.
Everybody
They're making Alex Toby Southwick mad.
I don't know. I guess I shouldn't be shocked, but
you know, 2020 would be a really hard year, obviously, for all venues and clubs. But 2021 and 2022 might be great times to open or start clubs.
To make up for it.
I mean, unless nothing unexpected happens again in the next 2 years. Which is such a weird thing for people to think right now. We got our one unexpected thing until the 10 years from now or something.
Yeah.
What a strange people we are.
We're optimistic in the shittiest ways.
Yeah, it's like, oh, there was a glitch, but somebody took care of it. One of those really good leaders we have, one of those companies that's infallible. They've locked it up. We're cool. I'm really worried that there's going to be a thing now where people at my work are going to be like, why do you still have a mask? This is you're freaking people out. Didn't you get the vaccine? What are you doing with that mask on still? I don't know if that's like an irrational fear, but I've started to have it. My boss.
I've been having it too. I've been thinking about that exact same thing. I've been thinking about how like I'm probably gonna have to go back to work soon, and I'm like, what if they don't enforce masks? Even if I'm wearing one, someone's gonna cough on me or something.
Oh God, I have so many feelings about all of this, but I don't know if this is like, should we wait for after this?
Yeah, maybe we should.
Wait.
I really want to talk to you guys about this.
I really want to hear what you have to say, because I feel adrift. And Kirby, you're one of my rocks.
Can we talk about it after this stream? I don't know if I'm going to help you at all. I might make it worse.
You might, but at least I'll know that like that's where that rock is. You know, even if you tell me stuff that I don't want to hear, it'll be like data that I can calibrate by.
Okay. I would like to talk to you guys about this because I feel a little bit like out of my mind about it. But
Can
I have
you give
some
me a
thoughts.
hint?
I have some.
You could talk about it. I mean, this is Wolfpack.
I know, but I just feel like it might be better for after the stream.
You mean like
I'm not really sure if I want to have this conversation. It's a weird conversation. I'm not sure I want to have it publicly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's so weird. Everything around this is so weird right now that I would just rather not. I want to talk to you guys about it, but I don't want to talk to the whole internet about it.
That's sensible. That's
Yeah.
sensible.
There are also still
let's
things.
Just shelve that till the end of the thing.
There's still some
Unless you
really
guys
cool
just wanna
things that
cut
happen
this
in this chapter.
book club right now and just only talk about this for the rest of it.
Well, let's rush through the remainder of this wonderful chapter that Connor loves.
Connor, what did you
I mean,
say?
the Crane gets captured by robots.
Oh, there's a lot in this chapter. There's so much.
It's a long chapter,
We're gonna have to have two meetings about it. Where there's no way we're gonna get through this whole chapter.
It's a big one.
I
There's
also
like 1,000 parts.
I also realized for the first time that Simulid is a blood-sucking fly, and Lemur is a ghost.
Wait, Simuliad is a blood. Oh,
Yeah.
that's okay. It's all right.
Yeah, Simuliad is a blood-sucking fly, and then Lemur is
But also a kind of a monkey, right?
Right. Lemur is a mammal, and I feel like that's the surface level explanation, but it's impossible to ignore that it's also a Greek ghost. Like,
Well, lemur is for sure. I just had never heard about Simuliad. That's awesome.
Oh
Yeah.
no,
I just googled it.
yeah, like that was really throwing me for a loop all of a sudden. Like, I guess they're monsters, but how do they relate to the Inhumu? They're not Inhumu.
No, they're not.
No, they're definitely not.
No, they're just people who are building themselves into robots.
Yeah, it's really interesting that there's like Inhumu actual vampires, and then there's a dude whose name is blood-sucking symbolic animal.
I have something that I would like to say that has major spoilers for Book of the Short Sun. But it's a crazy thing.
I don't want to. I'm gonna. If you're gonna say, I'm going in the other room.
Okay, I'll just hold off.
Wait.
Or you could say it, but just mute your mic, Connor.
Or I could mute.
Yeah, I want to hear it. I like spoilers.
But what do I? But would I have seen it? But it wouldn't matter maybe because it's insane. The whole book is just completely fucking insane.
What do you know about the neighbors? I'm going to say something about the neighbors.
Okay, I've only heard mention of the neighbors, and the last thing I saw was Horn being like, and I understood what he meant because whenever I've seen the neighbors, it's hard for me to understand how many of them there are.
Right.
That's all I know about the neighbors.
Well, I'm not going to give you too much more information than that, so that's okay. There is a theory out there that Typhon is not from Earth. That Typhon is from the place.
I was actually thinking this already.
He's not Inhumu. He's another kind of creature, because like the Inhumu come from one of the planets that they're going to, but there's two of them, and the other one had these creatures, and that Typhon is actually one of them.
I had already kind of was wondering if this was, if like blue and green were like the original planets, and that Earth isn't the original. I was wondering.
Well, so one thing that would be interesting about all this, if Typhon is an alien, is that like, so Abaya and Erebus and all of them, they're aliens. And one of them is named Scylla. So it could be that person who grew into a giant monster in Earth's ocean is also Typhon's daughter, because Typhon is this alien creature that comes from, and then like that's why he's sending Earth ships back to these planets, because they're his home planet and he wants to go back.
This makes sense. And because I think the reason I was thinking about this is because there's the big ocean lady.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, well, is that not just like Avaya and the other like air, space manatees or whatever the hell they are?
But so that would be a connection between the Enhamu, because the Enhamu killed out, if Typhon is this creature, this kind of person, the Enhamu killed them out. So that would be the connection between like Typhon and all those guys and the Enhamu. Potentially. This is a Borsky theory, so we don't know.
And Typhon would be sending this ship back also then to repopulate the decimated.
The theory that I like is that Typhon is sending ships back with human beings, and when they show up, he will overwrite all their minds, and they will all be Typhon.
And it would make a lot of sense, because there's the ship it's planned for them to be in this place when it starts breaking down. Like he's picked the planets. They've been picked for some reason. This would make sense entirely why he picked those planets.
I was thinking that too.
There is also, Gene Wolfe said that Quetzal isn't the only one. So but we don't know who else it could be.
In the world, you mean?
Correct.
you guys, I was gonna switch topics a little bit, but only if you guys.
I have nothing more to
This
say
is
about
just
this.
something I have written in the margin here when they're like describing Limna kind of receding or whatever. So, well, first of all, I just think it's cool that it's like Limna and Nessus are both like these moving cities. I just think that's cool.
Yeah.
But something that occurred to me is, and this is my note in the margin, is like, are there really no references? Do they really not talk about the end of the world in the cosmologic writings? Like, is that not a thing? Like, what is up with that? Because Silk is like, oh yeah, in another couple hundred years, this lake won't even exist, and it's like it's just weird to me that there would be that all this mythology would be there, but that there wouldn't be. There has to have been, or at least originally, if not, maybe it's like a thing that's been taken out or whatever. But there has to have been something about, like, mythologically, about what happens when you get to the goddamn planet. Like, there has to have been that, and maybe it's been retracted or whatever.
I think so. I think in other cities that they might be more into that. But I feel like the Catholicism of this city, like Catholics were kind of a reaction to those millenarian kind of like Jesus is coming back right now kind of groups. The Catholics were able to bolster up their forces in like 300, because clearly he's not coming back. So we got to figure out it. We can't just sit here waiting anymore. We got to start making money.
Right.
So yeah, I feel like, I mean, I question whether or not Gene even thought about how, like, yeah, they should be talking about the end of the world, because
I mean, that makes sense though if you're
like it's a distant thing in Catholicism.
That makes sense though too, what you're saying about that, because then it makes sense that you would go and start like pilfering all the chips out of the lenders or something.
Yeah, exactly.
And make your economy. It's like, okay, well, we just need to deal with what's happening right now.
And the rebel gods would have a huge incentive to take out any part of the religion that had to do with that.
And the counselors, and
yeah,
for sure. And then so I'm just thinking about. I mean, I'm not actually. I don't actually have something to say. I just started thinking about also Quetzal like sabotaging all of the windows. So yeah, it was like, what the fuck? There has to have been something about. It's weird to me that someone who like knows the cosmologic writings in and out would have just no concept of there being like an beyond mainframe or whatever. Like that mainframe isn't the only.
Just to walk down the path for a moment of why that may be. I mean, people are not considered people by the gods in this, by any stretch of the imagination. You know, especially the people who are awake for the journey. They're not people. They're the people that are going to have their brains overwritten. You know, like they're just vehicles for me. So them not knowing what's going on, like, I don't even necessarily think that the people who are living inside the world are the people who are supposed to be evacuated. I think
Here's
the sleepers might be the one.
Okay, yeah. Mm-hmm. So if there are all those like Mamelta and all the people who are like cryo frozen under the shiprock or whatever, yeah, what the fuck? I mean, there's way more of them than people living in the world, ostensibly, right? So what the fuck is even the point of having this like world?
I don't know that there's more of them, because they're important people. Like we get to meet one of them later on, who's like a duke. In the next book.
But there's a lot of them in the chamber.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I don't know.
And they have their brains like they tried to make their just like make them forget everything.
I feel like there's contingency plans here. Wait, do they make them forget everything? Mamelta remembers Earth. And later on, a guy named Roger remembers Earth.
Well, maybe it was like they tried to, but they couldn't do it or something. There's something like they tried to do that so that they could get, but then they ended, and it was supposed to be like voluntary or something, and then they were trying to kind of override them, and then they had to just like force them to do it.
Oh, the chat's happening.
Right? Mamelta was like forced to board.
I don't remember. I haven't read that part in a very
I'm
long
pretty
time.
sure that's the case. Mamelta remembers being like removed from her family and like stuck on, like forced to board this thing, which makes me think like there's a fuckload of people on there, and it like in cryo frozen or whatever, and then all these embryos and
Which feels like contingency plans, kind of, doesn't it?
I guess that makes sense. That it would be like, okay, well we have like.
We'll have
these frozen people, we have the frozen adult people, we have the frozen embryos, then we have the living world that will continue to reproduce itself.
And also robots, the chems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
It seems like when you get to where you're going, it would be helpful to have basically like this labor cast of people who have been bred essentially for, you know, like they built a generation ship, like they knew that there would be living people on it for generations, literally. And so they've got this like built-in option for like serfs, essentially, once they get there.
Johan theorizes that the people on the like living awake people are the subjects, and the cryogenics are the aristocracy.
Yeah, that's
what I
I
thought.
feel like that doesn't jive with my memory of what's up with Mamelta, though.
I haven't got that far, but that's the vibe that I get from it.
I wonder if it could be that like there's something about how the lives of the people function that keeps like the upkeep of the ship going and keeps like
just like oxygen, you know, it could they could just basically be like glorified trees or something that are like doing some kind of filtration or powering.
Yeah, like something that like keeps the ship going. That just that like something about their daily lives like keeps some mechanical. There's like
seems like there's a utility to the waking people in one way or another. It's either like or both. You know, it's like a utility to the ship as it travels, and a utility to the like a ruling class who's potentially overwritten like all Typhon or something. Because Typhon's not going to want to be all the serfs too, right?
I think he
Mamelta
does. I don't know.
In the companion, it says that Mamelta recalls the operation that altered her mind, and it also says that it's likely that she was enslaved on Earth.
Yeah.
Oh.
Like she is definitely not aristocracy.
Not
like that, and there's a fuckload of them. Like there's like the way he describes the chamber in which Mamelta is awakened from is very vast with fuckloads of people in it, and that's one of the things that had the door with the pauses seal that was broken or whatever. And there's like a lot of other doors like that. I think there's a lot of these people, and they're not just like aristocracy.
I think it's contingency plans.
That seems perfectly fair.
Well, I guess there's also maybe an idea that like since living in space, even if you've got some kind of simulated gravity, might have a long-term effect, especially over generations on, I mean, like they've got the flyers who can basically, they're like bird people in, you know, some sense. And, you know, like losing bone density is a big part of living in space. So maybe,
well, they also that mainframe is like very low gravity, they say.
Right.
Because it's in
So
the.
maybe all the frozen people are the ones who, because they had like Earth gravity. Once they get there, I mean, who knows if you would lose muscle mass in cryogenic slumber or whatever over centuries, but like once they get there, they won't have the same issue. You know, like they may be like hardier people. So if the idea is that you're taking these laborers and you're basically just putting them on ice so that they're going to be just as strong when you get there, I don't know. It's sort of like the opposite case from the waking people being the laborers, but like thinking about it, maybe there's a utility to having people who are like earth strong once they get to the new place.
I mean, the world has gravity too.
Right, but even I feel like even with an like simulated gravity, I don't know. It's all speculative at this point. So
Yeah.
do we know how strong the gravity is on the world?
I don't think so.
I have every reason to believe that it would be an Earth-like gravity.
I would think that too.
It would seem insane to me to have it be anything other than Earth-like gravity.
Yeah, I think the very opening scene of like the ball court
yeah.
freezing and stuff, that would be less surreal to Silk if it wasn't an Earth gravity.
Yeah.
And then in like Earth, he goes into like really a lot of detail about how people move around and the different like kinds of gravity.
Yeah.
And stuff. And there's just like there's literally no mention of that at all.
Yeah.
So even if it is different gravity, it's just not important at all. Right?
Yeah.
Like,
I get it. It's either an artificial gravity or like a natural gravity. Like I don't know how it would work inside of a
Right.
cylinder.
It rotates. It's centrifugal force.
Right.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Which is why.
And that's so at the center
mainframe
there's less
is-
gravity.
Exactly.
Well, they even kind of reference that a little bit. Like they're like, well, once it gets, because they're talking about the gun that they made to shoot down the flyers, and then like once the bullet gets to a certain height, which makes sense also, you know, on Earth, for example, but like it like stops flying straight at a certain point.
Yeah. Yeah, because it hits the point where the ship is moving around it rather than.
Shooting guns at the
But also,
sun.
gravity is related to density of matter, or yeah, right. Like that's why we have like gravity on a planet like that, and that's why there's a little bit less gravity on the moon. If it was purely natural, I don't know.
So
I don't
we,
know.
I'm pretty sure
It's like
science has
when I
no
got home,
explanation.
They came down and got food.
Oh,
and then Josie's like,
Gravity is there's been weird things happening in gravity lately.
It's so silly.
There's a big movement that gravity is not a force,
Stuck his butt on her and went down.
which I think is really exciting. There's been a lot of really interesting things being said about how time is a side effect of gravity.
So cute.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's consistent with relativity, right?
Yeah, it is.
Having a period.
That time works one way on Earth, but it would work in
Muted on the
a slightly
phone.
different way.
I mean,
that's true even if you're just going at a different speed or whatever, like a
Yeah.
clock on a train or whatever. Ryan, you're muted. Is that on purpose?
I think he's talking to Jess.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, we don't know anything about gravity.
Right.
We're looking for that graviton to be able to complete our whole standard model. Although the standard model last week was kind of completely blown out of the water because of the magnetic dipole potential of muons, which I don't exactly know what that is, but it isn't what we're expecting. And because of that, we think that there may be a whole nother world of particles out there and maybe a fifth force. Except now we don't think gravity's a force, so
is it
yeah, gravity
Oh,
is one of the
science.
craziest parts of science. It's the first thing that existed. I love gravity.
Gravity rules. And yet you
But
want to live
maybe.
in space free of gravity.
Yeah, because then I become gravity. Right? Like that's the whole, like the philosophical point of moving to space is that right now we're forced into the tyranny of an objective world because we're all drawn to a common point by gravity. You leave space, you're no longer living in an objective world because, I mean, like, you become the center of the universe when there's no other gravity around. Like, in a true ontological sense, if you are the only point of gravity that's affecting you, you are the center of the universe. And I think that that's what causes astronauts to trip, is they're approaching that zone.
Or as Dante put it, you become weightless when you shed your guilt,
Sure.
and you will literally float to the heavens.
Well, I mean, it certainly has made astronauts have crazy experiences. One of the first astronauts came back from space and immediately started the Institute for Noetic Research so that they could figure out psychic stuff, because he's like, that's what I got out of space, that we need to learn about this stuff that's going on with our minds. It's crazy.
Totally.
Yeah.
That's gotta play tricks, not play tricks with your head, but that has to open up your mind in so many ways to like view the Earth from a distance and to live without gravity for a period. Like, sure, it sounds like you're describing like there's something that literally happens to people, like in that opens up their mind, which totally makes sense.
It was a theory of William S. Burroughs and Timothy Leary. They thought that it was imperative for the future of the evolution of the human mind that we live in zero gravity.
I'm sure.
Space babies.
I'm sure, yeah. Like the space embryo.
Yeah. And so they're the ones that convinced me, and that's why I want to go to space.
You should.
But it also makes me respect gravity, which is love. Like love. Ryan, this relates to what you were saying. I feel like gravity is very much a manifestation of Venus.
Why not Gaia?
If gravity is a force of attraction.
Yes.
Right, and it's not, I mean, like, Earth isn't the only thing that creates gravity. Everything creates gravity.
Oh, that is true.
I just
So-
remembered that there's a quote from the anime Galaxy Express 39 that I wrote down once, and it was, "There's no God in space, just the truth of creation and the flow of time," which maybe isn't even true.
Yeah, that's interesting because according to what I've been reading about gravity, there's much more time closer to Earth and a lot less time in space.
Well, it is an anime about trains that go through space.
Yeah.
So I don't know if the scientific accuracy is really there. But it was a very poetic thing for one of the characters to say.
Yeah.
The flow of time does make it sound very linear. Like a train.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, but one of the things I've been reading about is there's this idea that, like, so it's easier to travel the speed of light, and in space when there's less gravity, and when you're traveling the speed of light, you're kind of occupying more of time, and once you get to the speed of light, you're at all points in time at once, and that's how time dilation works. I don't fully understand this, but so, like, time's not linear in space. It suddenly becomes a point.
Yeah. I mean, the idea that time's linear at all, like that time is ultimately linear, seems like none of us believe that, right?
Right.
Right. I mean, I guess this is exactly what Zadkiel's ship is talking about. You know, like it's kind of describing that.
Being in all times.
Pretty cool.
It's interesting to think about time, like because we experience it one way. Clearly, it's could be experienced in different ways. And if you were like an observer observing a universe or whatever, maybe a series of solar systems or something like that, if you're an observer looking at that, the time probably does kind of pulse out at certain points and behave differently to all the different points within it. So the Earth people experience time in a certain way, and the people on another planet experience time in another kind of way. But it might not only be experienced differently in terms of how slowly, right, or quickly it is experienced by different individuals within this system being observed, but it also might travel in different directions so that time pulses out this way, but then it will pulse back in kind of a backspin and travel what we would think of in a reverse direction.
Check
But
this
that's
out.
still linear. That's still linear.
But the
Right.
Big Bang happened in both directions, which is
Right.
probably, some people feel like that's where the antimatter went. There is another universe moving in the other direction of time that came out the other side of our Big Bang.
And I
That is
feel like
exactly
we
our
have-
universe, just where time flows in the other direction.
Yeah.
There's a Martin Amis book called Time's Arrow that's really cool about going backward, like a guy who's living backwards through in a world that moves backwards. It's real nice.
That sounds like it'd be interesting.
It is.
I don't fully feel like I understand, though apparently it's very important, the difference between time and causality.
Well, has anyone read the book An Experiment with Time by J.W. Dunn? And I'm asking
No.
you too, Sanik and Johan. I feel like one of you may have read this book. I put it on my Kindle, but I haven't cracked into it yet. But this dude, J.W. Dunn, had a feeling that he had prophetic dreams in his life. So he got himself and a bunch of his friends to like start doing experiments. And he feels like he proved that people regularly have prophetic dreams. That if you like catalog your dream, like you're dreaming extensively enough, you will find instances in which events were predicted in your dreams. And then he has a whole theory, which obviously I haven't got into the book yet, but I feel like it's called serial time. That he believed
Always
in.
serial time.
I'm not so into cereals, like polenta or grits.
Serialism.
I'm not really either.
I guess
You're looking something up right now?
Yeah, his theories are all about how to explain where the observer is in time.
Oh,
Let me
that's
check
interesting.
I feel like one of these. No, these guys haven't checked back in.
Apparently, that book was a big influence on J.R.R. Tolkien's unfinished novels, the Notion Club papers.
Say that.
And C.S. Lewis also used serialism. So, I don't know.
It's like there's like I think he
Wouldn't be
he
crazy
feels
for him to have gotten his hand on it.
that there's like infinite iterations of time. That like there's another level in which our consciousness experiences itself moving along the timeline, and then there's a level upon that where you see yourself observing the timeline, like it's some kind of infinite regression of time.
Well, that makes sense because sleep is the time when your body is least susceptible to the forces of gravity, and certainly when your consciousness is as well. Like,
Explain what you mean by that.
well, I feel like in waking life, you are upright and your body is sort of activated by forces in a certain way in order so that you can uh, do the stuff of life. And that the sleep cycle that you go through is when you, uh, power down. And I feel like you connect with the earth in a very different kind of way. And the forces in your body or whatever the functions that make the waking part happen are deactivated, and so you interact with gravity differently. You're more connected to the earth. You're more shut off, and your consciousness is as well. And so you're what's happening inside of your consciousness, or whatever you call a dream, I don't know, but whatever inside of you is generating that is happening because you're shut off from gravity to the most, in a way. I'm not saying that's exactly what's happening, but like, I'm just riffing with this conversation here, that your relationship to gravity has changed and you are the most free, right, in a certain kind of way, or at least you're free from the stuff of waking life.
It
That
seems
is
consistent
a
with
very interesting perception of it. I have a very different perception of it from being hospitalized for a long period of time,
Mhm.
uh, where I feel like laying prone for a month made gravity have more of an effect on my body because it caused sores and like bruises from the fluids pooling and stuff like that. Like,
Sure. Oh yeah, that
which
makes a
is
lot
not
of
to say
sense.
that I'm not. That's just my personal experience of it. I totally pick up what you're putting down,
Yeah.
but I feel very affected by gravity when I sleep.
Well, I feel like I mean, what Tim was saying is kind of maybe reflected in like float tank experiences too. Like
Oh yeah, yeah.
that's a situation where you are kind of like disconnecting from gravity I'm not in a super literal way because you're still dealing with that, but like your body is not feeling it in the same way.
Well, I think that Tim is talking more about consciousness, which is totally disconnected from gravity during that process, and I'm talking from a very somatic body. Like my body feels gravity, where my mind, like I think that Tim's point is that your mind gets to go everywhere.
Yeah, and maybe where we just kind of had like a little bit of a split is maybe more or less affected by gravity isn't exactly precise language, but more so that just a different relationship
Yeah,
to
I'm
gravity
totally
in sleep.
indifferent. I'm not even saying that my interpretation of this is anything other than me thinking about how much it sucked to be in the hospital for a month.
Well, I think a really key part of having an unconscious and dreaming life is the contrast with your standing waking life too. So like if you're bedridden for a month, you're not you're not experiencing your waking life in the same way, and it seems like you're in general, I don't know, it seems like having the contrast, having the switch between modes is important to both.
Well, remember that phenomenon where people were having COVID dreams in the first couple months? I know I certainly was having wild dreams after, like being in quarantine. And now I've never been in an experience like being in quarantine where I've more or less inside my home, to with more time for sure over the period of months. Somehow that change, like does affect your dream life. It'd be interesting if there was just more science. I would like to hear from the world of science about like why that is, or if it really was a phenomenon, or people were just suddenly maybe like sleeping more soundly, or more aware of their dreams, or what. But that did seem like an interesting thing that happened due to the changes in many people's lives.
It might have just been partly like you just have more time to be think about your own like sleeping and waking experiences.
Absolutely. And you're not waking up and instantly like, oh boy, I gotta go get coffee and put on my clothes and blah, blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're just living. Yeah, I mean, like you're sort of like in an isolation chamber in a like
Yeah.
in a float tank in some ways. So like you just a lot more present with things like that as they happen. Maybe. I don't know. I mean, some people have been, super distracted and had a really hard time focusing, and I think it probably just depends on who you are.
I would theorize that the loosening of the routine would like free certain elements of people's consciousness. That like the routine is what brings down, like and sort of like narrows your sensitivity to things that are happening inside your own head. And that routine could take a lot of different forms, but like that like an unexpected shattering of that routine, especially one that's kind of open-ended, I feel like would totally send parts of your brain that are normally like, like very tunnel vision into all kinds of new directions.
This reminds me of something. I was on a walk with a friend yesterday who's like in his mid-50s. And he was talking about reading something in Mad Magazine when he was a kid, or it was like a comic, and the comic was like a kid or like somebody, and it was like look both ways before you cross the street, and they looked both ways like a fuckload of times, like over and over and over again, and then they step off the curb and get flattened by a UFO. I think that is pertinent.
That is funny.
It's just like, oh yeah, there's another direction. Oh right. Everything doesn't exist within this very, very narrow band. It doesn't take much to just, he's like, and I don't really know what. He's like, that really stuck with me. And I was like, it's like the crack in the consensual construction or whatever.
Paradigm.
Yeah. I was trying to use a different word. But I mean, I think like, I guess what I'm saying is like, I don't think it takes much to kind of like shift that, like if you're just like, and I do this, and then I do this, and then I do this, and then I do like what Ryan's saying, like the routine or whatever of it. It really doesn't take much to just make you have to like make your brain just like open up.
Yeah. The bedrock of our ontology is actually very fragile.
Or the shiprock of our ontology.
Yeah, totally.
It kind of makes increased order a doomed project. Like it becomes more fragile the more you try to impose a routine on more people.
Well, that's just good. This is just all feeding back into like Typhon and his mission, and the mission as we see that manifested in our real world through like the Bezoses and the Musk and the Musks.
But it's also order is doomed, but order is also inevitable. Like
Ordo ab chao.
So time is a loss of order. Like that's all the time is things falling apart. That's how we experience time, is through decay. But that decay happens so fast that it stacks up on itself and builds itself into order. So like at the same time that order is constantly decaying, the decay of order is the rapid decay of order is what causes more order to rise. So inevitably, if you're trying to fight order, you will lose. But if you're trying to preserve order, you're going to lose. Like it's constantly being created and destroyed.
So you have to be agile. You have to be willing to move in both directions.
I like thinking of time as Shai Hulud from Dune, and that it's just a thing that it's a beast that we ride.
Or it eats you.
Right, or it's going to destroy you. Exactly. Like, but the best you can hope for is that you just ride it.
Yeah.
Come on, get off there.
Get your thumpers.
Yeah, right.
Thumpers out.
You summoned a big one.
Good girl.
Get your thumpers out.
But I do think at the heart of things is chaos. Except the very, very, very heart of things is so much ordered that it is the same thing as chaos. Right at the moment when everything is all in just one single point, it's the most ordered yet also the most chaotic it could possibly be.
Did we not talk about any section of this thing yet? I feel like we hit
There's a whole walk up the Pilgrim's Path.
Yeah,
Yesterday, I played Skyrim and I read this book, and both contain sections called the Pilgrim's Path.
that's very true. I'm confused about why Silk wants to throw the blood stick off the path. That is an interesting and weird part to me. I don't really understand what is going on there.
Is it purely a sacrifice?
I thought it was a sacrifice.
But he's like really impressed with the rap, and he's like, I think he's high on the Pilgrim's Path and stuff, and being like, oh man, Scylla's so cool, I should have just throw this away. Like, I feel like, is it like a faith thing? Or
like, is it that pull of Scylla that is also trying to get people to go? Is he getting a little bit of that?
I feel like it's got to be that somehow, but I don't know. I don't know why it focuses around that stick, unless that's like a representation of Sphyxix. But then again, like, is it?
No, because Oreb keeps telling him to keep the stick so he can fight with it.
Right. Because Oreb sees that there's a guy coming up.
Is he also saying, though, fight Scylla, who's trying to pull, like is Scylla trying to get him in the water, and he's pretty strong, so it's only getting so far as to be like, well, maybe I'll throw something of mine in there, because that would be cool, and it would look great. And like, you know, like on a regular person, they'd end up throwing their body in, but Silk's, he's got a good will, so it's just only rising to the level of I'll throw something I have in. And so
just to throw my little piece of conversation into this, I'm not convinced that Scylla's force is that strong that most people throw themselves off here, because we get a lot of accounts of people visiting this shrine, no problem. I'm just throwing that in there. Like, I don't know. Like, I'm open-minded to it, but I'm not.
It could be that, you know, it could be that it's like, I mean, like I feel like there's places in our world that are like this, where like, you know, not everyone that goes there ends up falling off the cliff, but a weird number of people do.
Well, maybe it's not Scylla necessarily. Okay, so because this temple is a doorway to other shit, so maybe the, like, going into the water is keeping people away from, keeping people who shouldn't be there, like keeping people who aren't, was it the counselors or it was someone else? People who aren't supposed to use it away. But it's also hidden, so that's kind of weird. They don't necessarily have to do that. But maybe it's that there's somebody already in the temple using it, then it tries to keep people from going. Because also there's somebody in the temple right now, and so maybe Silk is being tempted away.
Crane is there now too.
Crane is there now?
Sure. We just earlier in this chapter we saw him go down to the basement of Blood's house and get captured by robots, so they took him to the submarine.
They took him there.
Yeah.
I thought you meant, I was confused about, because I thought you were talking about the earlier story that the couple tells.
Oh, yeah,
And
no,
that's what
but
I
there
thought.
is also
Oh,
that.
that was earlier.
Yeah, because he's been out there before,
He's there now.
poking around. I wonder if that's how he got on their radar.
It's because he was poking around Lemna.
Because they nabbed him pretty, like, handily when he was at Bloods.
Yeah.
Like, maybe all Blood and all them leaving was a setup to get Crane.
It doesn't seem like Lemur would just be strolling around anywhere.
No, they were waiting for him, for
Yeah.
sure. Like, yeah. He goes out there, he's poking around at the shrine, he doesn't really come up with anything. He goes back. You know?
Yeah.
I wonder what Crane thinks of what happened to Koipu. I think that actually lends some weight to what Jordan was saying about, like, maybe this isn't just Scylla getting people to throw themselves into the lake. Like, because Crane... I think that Crane's an atheist.
Yeah.
Or, like, I don't think that he cares about what the gods are doing. But he clearly thinks that there's something to what happened to Koipu. He was hot on that trail and asking questions about it.
Because, like, what are the questions he asks? He asks, is he related to the counselors?
Mm-hmm.
But was that just to get them to start talking about the counselors?
Yeah, I don't. Where is that?
He is trying to figure out. He is trying to get information on them.
Is that the one where he's feeling his skin and asking about his grandparents and parents and, like, what they died of?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so what's that about?
Who built the shrine? Right? Yes, who built the shrine?
Well, yeah, and Silk's, like, weird instinct was, oh, maybe the counselor built it to try to do hydromancy, which is real old, but there are probably people that still remembered it when, 100 years ago. He wanted to know if my mother and father were in good health, and he kept feeling my skin and what my grandmother died of.
Because he's all into genetics.
I mean, could that be part of looking for the frozen baby that Tussa had bought?
They both seem to involve specific genetics.
Yeah.
There's reason to think they're related, for sure.
That could be another reason why he mentions Silk's blue eyes. Because wouldn't he then be looking for a blue-eyed person? Yes, potentially.
He could have, like, his radar out for anything that's, like, conspicuous involving genetics. And if Trivagant is planning a war with Viron, maybe they want to know whether there's, like, genetically engineered soldiers, or on the other hand, maybe if there's, like, a genetic decay occurring in this other city, is it going to be easier or harder to invade? And isn't that ultimately what Crane's ostensible job would be, is to do recon for a war that they're preparing?
I'm not sure if it necessarily has to be war. I mean, in the next chapter we get a little bit of Remora and Gulo talking and like, wait, no, who is it? Somebody's asking somebody about like, don't you think that Byron should be sharing with Palustria because they don't have any rice and kind of stuff
that's
like
in
that?
this
I think
chapter.
That's
every
in this chapter.
Oh, okay. I think that every city kind of thinks that, like, every city's failing and every city thinks that the other cities have it better.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of think.
Yeah, this is one of Crane's questions, is if we knew how badly off some of the other cities were, and didn't we think we ought to help. I said that the first thing we ought to do is make sure everyone there got a fair share of their own food, because a lot of the trouble was because of people there buying up corn and waiting for higher prices. I said prices in Byron were high enough for me already, and without our sending rice to Palustria.
So yeah, I think that yeah, everybody assumes we're going to go out and find a place that has stuff, and then we'll go to war and take their stuff. I guess. But they're also going to find that no place is actually doing better than they are.
But they do eventually.
Because it's the end of the world.
They do eventually come.
But the thing that makes them come is Crane's death.
Okay, so that would make sense then if it's like we could we're preparing for a hypothetical war at many places. And these scouts are going to find out which of the places is smartest to go to. And part of that is like what they have, and another part of that is like, well, where would their army be? Who would be in their army?
Right.
Are their counselors good at organizing people? Like those kind of things. Is there stuff worth taking, and can they stop us from taking it?
Yeah. Because Remora also in the next chapter talks about like he asks Gulo, like, do you know where our army is? And Gulo's like, in storage, and he's all like, yes, because if they come, we'll have fresh new soldiers to get them, and like, so like everybody's aware of the possibility of that kind of a war, I guess, and has their own little plans for it.
Oh, I wish Gene was alive to see the new season of Attack on Titan. I feel like he'd like it. It shares a lot, maybe not a lot, but it shares some things with the Long Sun book.
Huh.
Like people in a very sheltered, constructed environment that are really clueless about what is really going on and how they got there.
Is that the one with the big giants that eat the people?
Yeah.
And the guy like fights them. There's like a fighter in every generation or something.
There's a whole squad of people that have.
Oh right.
They zip around on little zip lines and in order to get to the back of the Titan and stab it in the nape of its neck with swords. So that's the only way they can kill him.
Yeah, I think I saw the first 4 or so episodes of that.
Yeah, I'm watching it like slowly. I'm still in the first season though. It's good.
It's really intense.
It's like Evangelion if they took out the like introductory, like this is just a normal anime stuff, and they just got straight to like this is crazy.
I feel like it becomes a real masterclass in escalation, where like a thing that would end a season in another show ends an episode in Attack on Titan, and you're like, well, how does this go forward from here? And yet it does. And then at the end of the next episode, it's like, well, how does it? We're fucked. Everything's completely fucked now. And then they just keep finding ways to like escalate a situation that appears to have been over dramatic from the start.
The Akira comic book is like that, where like the Akira movie ends with the absolute destruction of Neo Tokyo. Neo Tokyo gets destroyed like twice a day in the comic. It's just You get to the end of the first comic and you're like, well, that was the entire movie, and then it just keeps getting bigger. You're like,
There's
Oh,
this
yeah.
other giant anime in Papa Gurren Lagann that he's like moves very quickly in the same way, but not as like constant destruction. It's like the characters start out literally living underground as cave people, and then by the end of the series, which is only like 20 episodes long, they're a hyper advanced spacefaring civilization within the same generation. It's like the people who lived underground
Nice.
are then just basically uplifted, and it goes to a completely different place than just when it starts. And every episode just like something entirely new and insane gets introduced, and you're like, okay.
What show is this?
Tengen Toppa Gurren Lagann.
Oh.
I've been thinking about watching that one.
It's fun. It's a fun one, and it's only one season and just goes at an insane pace.
Man, since they're spending almost $500 million on the first season of Lord of the Rings, I feel like a live action show with that kind of premise is not out of the question any longer. Like, it would be so sick to see a show that starts as a total low-tech medieval fantasy, and then you get the characters in space eventually. With $500 million, you could do that.
Yeah, just literally strap a rocket on them.
You could film it in real space, probably.
Yeah, why not?
I think the permits might be a real bitch to try to film in space.
There's no
in
laws
charge of
there.
space, Connor.
There's laws about getting there.
Not when our Lord and Savior Musk makes it possible for all of us.
Yeah, how are you going to force a law on Elon?
Yeah.
He'll shoot a space flamethrower at you.
I think Elon was the law that I was talking about.
The Al Swearingen of Mars.
Yeah. Are you into Elon Musk?
Am I into him?
Yeah.
I don't know how one would be.
Oh man, I watched this guy who has like it's called Answers with Joe, and he likes to talk about crazy out there stuff. He's the one that I laid out the archaeological evidence that there may have been a advanced culture before us, and that's where we're getting our rare earth metals from. Anyway, I got real into his thought, and then because it's, futurist and transhuman, and then he slowly revealed that he's a huge fanboy of Elon Musk, and anything that Elon Musk does is golden to him. And suddenly I was like, well, all these ideas were really great.
I don't know.
But now I know that there's this flaw that you have this dogmatic love of Elon Musk.
I have a flaw that I can't like it. You can't. I guess I feel like there's a balance between dorkiness and money. Like, if you got no money and you're a huge dork, that rules. And if you've got a ton of money but you're a dork, like, that doesn't compute to me. I can't get with it.
Yeah.
Like, I guess I just want aristocrats to be refined, or otherwise I don't understand them.
Yeah, I think Elon Musk is thought of as a genius because he has these super technical ideas that reinvent a lot of aspects of our, for example, transportation. But they're not solutions. They're just shitty new versions, like the maglev train or the Tesla. Those don't address our problems. They just transmog.
No, because the goal is to make money in a flashy way. It's not to like make to solve a problem. Like, the problem to solve is, how do I have more money than I have now?
That whole
like something like the maglev might be cool, I guess. I don't know, but the way it's being sold to municipalities is just like a luxury transit system far away from like the dirty masses that goes way faster than
I have a friend.
a train.
The tunnel thing is like only self-driving cars can go into it, and so it's like here's a faster, more efficient way to get like the two people in your car to where they're going, but you have to have a $30,000 car that can drive itself to work. And it's just utterly insane. And that's going to be more popular than the maglev. I think, because it requires like personal wealth to use.
How close are we right now to talking about NFTs?
I
Oh,
can't
before,
believe we
hang
haven't.
on. I need to say something about Musk first. I was at my friend's for dinner the other night. Who's like my Kenny and I have these two friends who are like our other pod people, and my one friend is like, anyway, he's a complicated man, but you guys would really like him. He's a complete freak, but
Can you not say his name?
I just know you don't know him, so it doesn't matter.
Okay.
His name is John.
Okay.
I know that you guys don't know him. But anyway, he is kind of like a Muscophile a little bit, but it's so fun because he's obsessed with the idea that he's gonna get that Cybertruck one day, which I think is hilarious because it's never gonna be made. But we were kind of like talking shit a little to him, and our other friend was like, yeah, I have a friend who put a deposit down for one of those Powerwall things like 7 or 8 years ago, and like that's never gonna happen. Which is like the battery that you can power, you can power your house off of with like solar panels.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then we were just like joking about that, but also I brought up the thing that we talk about here all the time about how you can't. Well, first I was just talking about like rare earth metals and like we're gonna just destroy whole like countries and landscapes and like people's quality of life and blah 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 to like mine all the fucking shit for all these batteries, but and I was like, nobody fucking talks about that, but also I brought up the thing we talk about here all the time, which is that you can't just do the same thing we're doing now, but with a different type of energy production. Like you have to scale this shit back. You can't just do extremist consumption and growth into the infinite growth into the future, and just do it with solar panels instead. Like if you're doing this version, it's gonna destroy everything, no matter how you power it or whatever. Yeah. And he was like, he was kind of like, oh fuck.
It is like the most explicit, like dramatic presentation of hubris that could possibly happen. It's so unintelligent that it's. I don't know. But
that's why space travel is so essential to the visions of Musk and I think Bezos ultimately. Yes. Because I think they inherently understand that the Earth that we are currently inhabiting will serve as a trash pile to future generations of the wealthy. And that this is now we're building a landmine, like a mine landfill is what I'm thinking of saying. That's basically the direction of
like Battle Angel Alita.
Exactly like that. And I was actually just about to say that.
Yeah.
Real quick, while we're talking about rare earth metals, and this actually I feel like can loop back into Long Sun. Did you guys know that there's a crucial component of really tiny batteries or microchips called tantalum?
Oh, no.
It's like one of the ones that's like really crucial and mostly found in like a few very specific places, and that like a lot of the looting of Africa is based around tantalum, like tantalum mines. There's only a couple of them, and whoever controls them has a lot of wealth, so that's why certain African countries are like corrupt in the shape that they're corrupt, is because they're.
That's why China wants to annex the Congo.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's actually called tantalum, and it's named after Tantalus, the Greek guy who's punished by he's got the tree that has fruit that he can never reach. It goes, the fruit of the tree pulls out of his reach when he tries to get it, and there's a pool of water around his feet. When he tries to scoop them up, it recedes back away, and forever and ever he's doomed in the underworld to like starve and thirst. And that's what this ore is named after.
The House of Atreus comes from him.
We live in we just live in a big curse. that we've identified, that we've like thousands of years ago outlined what our doom was, and here we are.
We love
Well, that's
it.
the thing with
We
Doom.
love punishment.
Yeah,
Doom is inevitable.
doom is
You can't escape it.
Yeah, in this realm.
It's what makes this conversation interesting to me is that we could escape it. Like we could.
If
as
you
a
can't escape it,
species,
it's not Doom.
figure it out. Like we could get our act together. Like there's the solutions are there. Like there's
Are they?
solutions. Yeah.
I mean, the solution, I think, like Connor says this a lot, like the solution isn't reversing climate change. It's figuring out a new way to live that acknowledges and takes climate change into account.
Yeah.
And like we can definitely not get away from the doom if the idea continues to be, well, if we'll just cleverly put a couple things together and be back on track. Which is also the entire attitude towards COVID, which is like, instead of thinking of any of this as a consequence of something we've done, it's purely like a random interruption of what we've done. And it's so bizarre because no one was happy with what we had before. And yet now there's just this intense like groundswell of energy to replace it and get it back and to feel a relief of having that thing back.
I think that there were people who were more satisfied with the way things were before than we can easily recognize. I'm saying that I think that because I'm one of the people who couldn't. Yes, I totally feel that you're correct. That like who was happy in the old system, but I think that we would be startled to find how many people were happy in the old system, even people who were being fucked by it.
I'll agree with that, but I also think that some of those people are actually just had plans and they'd committed in their mind to those plans, and that
very much so.
And that's like it's hard for people, I think, to separate like I was happy in that world to like my whole conception of the future involved things I was doing, and if I don't do those things, like before it was like if I don't do these things for my career, I'm gonna die, and then that feeling is still there, and there's like a relief to getting back on track to that plan, even though that plan was motivated by a fear of dying and not like a joy in how things were.
I mean, there's also a case that like what makes people feel happy and safe isn't necessarily what is best for them.
Yeah.
You know, like we all agree COVID's a horrible thing and that we need to figure out how to stop it, but it also is probably the best thing that could happen for society right now. You know, and same thing with Donald Trump. Donald Trump was awful. He was a monster. We never should have let that happen. Something needs to destroy our government.
And this, I think, loops back into Long Sun too. I think a big theme of this book is that like sometimes people are instruments of good, or events are instruments of good, even though they're not intentionally trying to do good, or maybe even intentionally trying to do bad.
Yeah.
He says that exactly. Silk says that exactly at the end of this chapter. He says that Gulo is a bad person who thinks he's good, which is the worst, most dangerous.
Yeah,
kind of
I thought of us when I read that.
Who thinks he's bad.
Yeah,
and that's a great kind of person.
Oh man, I was thinking about Akira for the first time in a while, because at one of the jobs I have, there's like a scandal going on,
somebody's been absorbing all the machines into their body.
No, there's children who now have like immense power, and they're kids, but this weapon they have is hugely powerful and destructive, and nobody. Well, I was thinking more of like arguments about justice.
Oh, okay.
Like they have these things, and they've aimed it at at the authorities, and it's working. Like it has, they have damaged the school authorities, and local news is getting in on it. And like, it just, from my point of view, like, you know, because my career is not wrapped up in this place, nor is my family. Like I'm a total like weird outsider kind of dropped in. I'm a piece of furniture there basically that they rent like for a couple hours every week. And it looks so much like Akira to me. Like I'm watching these kids who are like, they just have no ability to control the power they have. And so even though there's so much good intentions and there's like a lot of truth to what they're saying and doing, there's also like going to be destruction at the end. There would just be a leveled rubble that they can't reign over because they're kids. Like, and they don't even want to reign over it. And I don't even think
nobody should reign. Reigning is a bad idea.
Yeah. And
I mean, kids, like
yeah,
college kids?
asshole.
No, I mean high schoolers.
High schoolers,
which is like the age of Akira kids, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I feel like I'm seeing this like weird political version of like the kid with this huge arm that's like getting bigger and it's like, no, I'm gonna hurt the people that hurt me, and like more and more tumors
that suddenly
are growing.
has the power of an atomic bomb.
Yeah, it's like really happening, and it's very I don't know, it's kind of horrifying and beautiful.
I mean, Akira also, in the background of Akira, there are all those protests that are going on the whole time. You know, like the lady protagonist is there to take down the government. That's all she's there to do. Kay, her name is.
Oh man, I need to watch that Mr. Robot show.
You do. Oh my god.
I really do.
I think you would really like it.
Oh, I chickened out too early. I need to go back.
There's twists and turns.
Yeah, I mean,
it doesn't really resemble the show it starts as at all.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. And also, I love Christian Slater. I guess
this is the best thing he's ever done.
He's great.
Better than Cuffs?
Yes, no, hands down. This is the best thing he's ever done.
All right, I'll watch it.
Like this, I think of Christian Slater in a different way now.
You don't think of him as a cute version of Jack Nicholson?
I don't. For the first time in my life.
Wow.
We watched the 80s film adaptation of In the Name of the Rose recently.
Yeah, he's in that.
Yeah,
you get to see his butt too.
Yeah, you see his butt. He has very awkward sex with a like apparently mute lady.
Nice.
It's a gross movie. I can't I can't really recommend it.
Mr. Robot also has a lot of lupine things that are happening in it. Like the first moment of the show, the first scene of the show, you don't get it until after you've seen the final episode of the whole show.
Nice.
Like there's no possible way for you to get it until you've seen the whole thing.
Lupine means like Wolfian?
Yeah.
Why is that fucked up?
I've just never heard anyone say that.
Oh no, it's just like the whole like read it and then read it again and read it again thing. The Gene Wolfe critic people call it lupine looping.
EarthNet,
like,
I think.
That I didn't come up with that term. That's somebody else's term.
Yeah, I think EarthNet like developed that term.
Yeah.
That's so funny. Why has that never come up?
I talked about it one time during an interview about my Lovecraft play that Ryan
I'm just
was in.
saying it's not. No one's ever said that on our show.
I can't believe that I haven't said it before.
We are.
Because it is a term that I like.
That's the kind of thing that I react to, which I'm displaying right now.
Well, lupine looping is a thing.
That is very funny, is what I'm saying. That's all. That's all I'm saying. I think that's funny.
I've heard it.
Oh man, the person that thinks they're good is the worst kind of person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's too bad because I really like Gulo. And
you can still like him.
Gulo, Incus keeps accusing Gulo of being in love with Silk.
You can still. Oh yeah, that's cool. I forgot about that.
Yeah,
you can still like him. You can still like him, man.
Oh yeah. It's an interesting thing because I think that Silk's assessment is right, that Gulo is bad. But I do also think that it's interesting that in the end Gulo is on Silk's side. Like you can be a bad person and still be on the right side. I guess is an interesting thing that I'm parsing out from that.
Well, also, like, a lot of times whether you're good or bad depends on who you're associating with.
Sure. I mean, let's use people first language here. So you can be a person who operates, like your operating style is bad, even though you are on the good side.
Which is most people now, I think, right?
I think most people are on the bad side right now.
With the
Lawful evil.
With what?
In their aims, not their operating style, you mean?
I feel both. I think I'm very terrified of people's operating style right now.
Oh yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is
Oh
I
my
feel
God,
like the
holy shit.
default
And I don't
setting
understand
now.
what their aims are.
I even see it in myself. I don't know exactly what you're talking about, but like lately I've been feeling like I'm like a worse version of myself, like not meaning like my presence in the world and like how I like interact with the world. It's like a like worse or like bad version of what it's been before. I don't know if it's isolation or what, but I don't know if that's what you're talking about.
I'm having to manage a lot of empathy failure.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And
That's
I
fine.
think more and more
In
often
myself.
people are also taking their it's like even more than it used to be, people are getting their what is a word I'm trying to use? I don't know. It's just like they're outsourcing their thinking to other people. I mean, that's always true, but I feel like it's even more true now. Like there's like the uniformity of thought is so extreme. It's like a Shayans. It's like so extreme. I think we talked about this last time.
I feel like people used to do it more casually.
So extreme to me right now. Like the correct thought thing. Like you might as well have like the thing of correct thought where like these are the sentences you're allowed to use. It's like so close to that it feels like it's kind of like I watched that movie Idiocracy for the first time. Like maybe
Did that hold up?
Maybe two. No, but I'm saying for the first time I never had seen it, and I watched it like two years ago maybe, and it was like, ooh, like I feel like if I watched this at the time it was made, it would have been really funny. But and it is funny still, but right now watching it, it's like so close actually to reality that it's like almost not funny because it's like barely a satire anymore. And in that sense, I have a really similar feeling about the Ashayans where I'm just like, it's functionally fucking, we're already there. Like that's what's like it's like having conversations with people is so it
fraught.
Scrambles my fucking brain. It just scrambles my fucking brain because you're like, holy shit. And it's like, it's not your thought. It's someone else's that they gave to you.
Yeah.
It does, like, you just don't care. It's like crazy. And I think, to a degree that's always been the case. But I feel like the locked in nature of it right now is like so turned up.
Well, because it's not even how people are doing it. It's people think that that's what they're supposed to do. People think like this is my one-way ticket to being a good person is to like read this script and then reiterate the script every time I have any conversation because like these are the things I'm supposed to care about.
I think it also has to do with, I mean, Tim held up the phone and it's like, the internet, but it's not, I don't think the internet is necessarily that different of like a medium of marketing ideas as like other media have been of marketing ideas. Like people just watching TV all the time. But I think maybe part of where it feels different now is that the reality we're living in is one in which people are constantly marketing themselves as a product. It's like you have to have an image of yourself. Like, it just wasn't like that really before. It was like, you had the certain things you needed to do, like you have a job and a house and a blah, blah, blah. And it was like locked in a certain way that way. But now it's like your thoughts are like commodified. Like, you have to, and your like opinions about things have to be approved by people. You have to post a picture of yourself with your opinion about something next to it, and then let everyone approve of it, so that you know that that's the correct opinion to have. And it's like, it makes I feel like that has to do with why it's so locked in right now, because you're not allowed to just like have private thoughts really anymore. You have to like tell people what they are so that they can tell you if it's correct or not. Not even people you know, like a bunch of strangers. You have to ask a bunch of strangers if your opinion about something is correct or not.
This is something that confuses me in the whole wokeness conversation, where like, some people are saying stuff that are upsetting other people, and then the people who say, but they're saying it because they know that it's upsetting.
Yeah.
Like when you tell an offensive joke, it's very rare that you accidentally tell an offensive joke and then defend it to the hilt. When you tell an offensive joke, you meant to be offensive. So when people are offended, it blows my mind that you're upset at them for being offended. The very thing, it'd be like if I picked up a book and then got upset at it for being in my hand. Like you did it. You succeeded. You were offensive. Don't get upset that people are offended.
I think
if they weren't offended, you wouldn't have done it in the first place. It's so confusing to me.
I think the thing that people take issue with is the extent of like trying to erase a person that the offended parties go to.
And this is really where things are like, you couldn't be erased before because nobody knew about you and gave a shit who you were.
Right.
Exactly.
So like, the trick is they're not erasing you at all.
Right. Well, that's the weird thing, is like, you can't be ostracized from a group you don't want to belong to. So like, what's the problem with being canceled? Like,
and it's not you. It's
you can't get canceled if you don't care
on the internet. Or whatever.
Yeah.
Connor's point.
I think there's also like a weird undercurrent of like, well, all art's basically the same because it's all just a diversion. So if this person makes art and then we find out something bad about them, we just get a different person in their place. It doesn't matter. And I think that is like unsettling on a visceral level, but really hard to articulate for people. Like the feeling that,
but also always been true. Like if people don't like what you do, they're going to find another person to do it.
Perhaps.
I'm not trying to disagree with what you said. I'm agreeing with you. I think.
I feel like also there's a, like with what you're talking about, Jen, where when the things you're allowed to say like contract into a narrow space, then the only way you can express your individuality is like volume. Like you can't put a nuance on any opinion right now, but what you can do is be like more passionate than someone else and like more zealous. And so that's how people feel that they've added themselves to the world. Is like, I said the thing I'm supposed to say, but I said it like, I don't give a fuck if those bad people die. I'll kill them myself. I'm this big.
Which is a huge problem.
The distinctions that you have are just like frills, too. Like just like fashion.
I also feel like people are like, so I'm thinking about Piers Morgan, right? Who was en route to get canceled, but instead he canceled himself. He saw that that's where it was going. And he's like, I quit. And then he got everybody mad at everybody for making him quit. But like, it was his show. He was like the boss. Like he didn't have to quit. Nobody was making him do that. Like, what I'm saying is that both sides are playing into this whole drama.
Mm-hmm.
Like everybody's anticipating what is going to happen. So it's definitely nobody can get out of its way.
Yeah.
Because we're rushing to that end goal,
Yeah.
Johan has pitched in, I think people before very recently consciously chose to assimilate to common values because they weighed the benefits, but now it just seems like an idle and careless thing. And then he also said, I don't see art as democratic or capitalistic, and I see it as scary when art is an only exercise of populism and popular opinion.
This was my response to Bill Maher getting upset that the Oscars are gonna try to have more black people in them. Where he all like, you can't require there be a certain number of black people in a movie or it's not going to get an Oscar. Like, no artist can adhere to race quotas. And I was like, no artist should be trying to win an Oscar.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like who gives a shit about the Oscars? Get a life, dude.
The only person who's making a movie with the hopes that it gets like specifically designing it to get an Oscar is Harvey Weinstein.
And whoever that person is going to have no problem with a race quote. Like, they're champing at the bit for. They're like, oh, great. Now I know how to get an Oscar.
Oh, you're telling me exactly what I need to do instead of me trying to figure it out?
You got another rule? I can follow them.
Refining this formula even more.
Yeah, let's write it all down.
Yeah. I'll do it.
And
I'll do it.
It's so weird because the very phone that you held up was at some point was like, oh, this will obviously lead to like a broad range of different things that can be successful because you won't need to open a magazine to find out what bands are around. You can just listen to their fucking music on a website. And that didn't pan out at all. But it was doomed. It was doomed.
You couldn't get away from it.
No, because we didn't destroy advertising when it was small.
You can't destroy advertising.
I've been thinking about this because, remember in the 90s, it was all about, there was, ad busters and shit. It was all about, these things suck. Backstreet Boys suck. I don't know if they were around yet, but, you know what I mean? But now, all of a sudden, I guess this is, our generation decided, no, we need to be relevant. We need to be in the mainstream. Please let me be in the mainstream. I'll do anything to be in the mainstream.
This is the story of Pitchfork.
But Generation X wasn't like that. They were maybe that's how they actually were. But that isn't their
they
reputation.
think of themselves that way.
I think that
all millennials want I think you were talking about this earlier. Literally everybody, almost everyone I know. No, this isn't true, but I've heard about so many people starting small businesses over quarantine. Why does everyone fucking want a small business? Why is everyone's hobby a fucking business? I don't want your not that many people want your hair clip or whatever. That's not true. I bought hair clips yesterday. But,
Nobody wants your hair clip. I'll buy one.
Except me. I just spent $40 on hair clips. I won't say that I'm better than anyone else. But this is the thing now. This is the deal that
This was something I guess I tried to bring up a couple of weeks ago and didn't do a good job of expressing. But I think part of what you're talking about, Jordan, is that even if people were still ultimately kind of conformist in the 90s, there was an archetype of rebellion that existed and that was sort of romanticized. And even if it didn't play out literally in people's lives, it was at least something that was dreamed of, and it was at least something that was romanticized somewhere. And
the desire and the motivation, and not what
this is a natural progression of that.
Did not rebel. They talked about it, and it's like the hippies.
Right, but that's important though.
They just all went back and got jobs.
I don't care. I don't care what actually happened. What I'm talking about is the desires and what people thought they were doing. Even in the 60s, people were oh, we're hippie. They didn't say that, but the 60s stood for something. But now it's no. Now it's I need as many hits on my video on YouTube. And it's just not something that would ever have wanted to be popular at any time. It would have been, you know what I mean? Just you know what I'm saying? Everyone wants to be a brand.
Yeah, that's what I was.
That's what I mean. Nobody wanted to be a brand 15 years ago.
That's what I'm talking about.
7 years.
people like commodifying their personalities.
And people didn't have access to commodify themselves as much as they do now, which is also like this like technological component to it. Like I feel like during
I kind of think Tim's more right.
The last couple generations, they were developing the language of like branding and like commodification, and then that became knowledge that people could acquire. Like, how does this work? How can I create something that will get me attention? And then there was just this like explosion of like the ability to
manifest all these structures that have been built in order to like for you to do these, like all of these structures that have been built were built by fucking Gen Xers. Like they built this shit.
It was before Gen Xers.
Did you ever?
They really brought us into it, though. They like really.
Problem is social mobility. The moment you thought that you could go from being common to being aristocracy, that created the need to market yourself.
This is the like go to college.
Yeah.
Get a job, learn to code or whatever. Like that's why we have apps and stuff, because everyone fucking learned to code and that's their job. And like, okay, I need to like do something for my stupid job. I'll make a productivity app or whatever.
This is the way that the Middle Ages were better than now. You weren't going to get a better life.
Yes.
So you had to enjoy this one. Yes. And now that you could have a better life, you're not going to enjoy any life.
Well, we talked about how that's a Wolfian idea. And that's like the ideal that Wolfe identifies in Tolkien and classical fantasy. Classical, neoclassical.
Mark?
Sorry, I've been trying to say the same thing for like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter anymore.
Oh man, no, come on.
No, wait, I didn't realize that you were. I'm sorry.
No, you're very far from your microphone.
Oh, all right. There's a website in the early 2000s called Hipster Runoff. Did you guys ever look at that or read it? Okay, it was a.
I lived it.
It was a satire. It was a satire site, but it was the first. Like it was satirizing that like early 2000s like Williamsburg, Brooklyn thing, and it was very funny. But the one thing that it talked a lot about, and this is all like right before smartphones became a thing. That was the first time I ever remember reading about personal brands. And that was a point where the personal brand was kind of this like New York socialite archetype. But then like just seeing how that is borne out in a culture where we have smartphones all the time is that like it was a satire thing. And now it's just like a very real and normal thing that basically we all learned how to code and created apps to make it a universal thing. And it was just interesting thinking back on that. Like, I don't know if I'm sure personal branding was a thing before that guy was satirizing it, but like that was when I experienced it, at least.
Yeah, I might just be like behind the curve and like knowing when these things happened or like realizing them because I pay attention to so few things in the actual world.
I also feel like the Gen X, like the Gen X ideal, the like sort of Richard Linklater slacker thing, ended up becoming the primary, like the characteristics of that archetype are the things that ended up being the primary criticisms of millennials. The like living at home and not having a career and smoking too much weed and being frivolous with money and things like that. Like those are all things that the Gen X generation like absolutely romanticized. And
how dare their kids achieve it?
Yeah, exactly. And now the millennials are even like kind of aging out of that being the youngest people. So then you get this whole like shit with the boomer or the Zoomers, where everybody's mad about like being told that they part their hair wrong or something. But I don't know. It's interesting. I don't know what the romanticized version of the millennial ultimately is, because I feel like it's defined more by these like popular criticisms.
I think that the romantic vision of the millennials is like just to have a house and a safe job.
Yeah,
No,
I
but
think
like
security.
how people on the outside view us.
Yeah, I mean like the
Yeah,
art.
the romanticization of that.
Yeah.
There definitely feels like a huge influence in people feeling like their life is in danger, even though that's like mostly just the tenor of the news and not actually like new level of threat to people's safety. But that like
I mean, being alive puts your life in danger.
Yeah, but I was saying like in the
that's not
90s there was like, I mean, it's always an illusion. Like safety is always an illusion. But there was a pretty good one in the 90s where people felt like there was place in the world for people who were less productive or less conformist, that could exist. But now, because it's like a life or death, like every decision is life or death and is scrutinized in public and stuff, like there's not the luxury to dream of being a slacker or being like a freak, because you feel like such pressure to make the correct decision not to die.
I guess the defining characteristic of the millennial then is anxiety.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, there's like, this is also making me think. There's also like the hustle, like romanticizing the hustle, and like getting yourself out there, getting followers or whatever.
Make it bread.
I feel those two things go hand, like they're a pursuit of safety. You know, if I'm not going to get, if I can't have safety the way I'm supposed to, then I'm going to figure it. I'm going to build my own little safety here.
Yeah, the hustle is a response to the alternative of not being secure.
The hustle is fascinating. So wait, can I just say really quick? So I watched YouTube, and you know how YouTube has like 1 million ads these days if you watch like long programs on YouTube. Like,
you don't have an ad blocker?
Maybe I should get it. I don't know.
Use an ad blocker.
You do not have to watch those.
I watch YouTube on my Switch, and there's not there's not an ad blocker for the Switch.
I'll do that. But anyway, sometimes advertisements are like interesting little windows into like the world. Not that I enjoy them, but just so there's 2 advertisements that I get a lot. One is one I don't even know the product. I'll mention that second. The first is for like Grammarly, which I guess is like some kind of writing software or something, and it's like Grammarly can help you writing. Writing is hard, but Grammarly makes it easy, so you don't miss a second of work. I'm like, what the fuck kind of advertising copy is that? Yeah. Who fantasizes about buying something so that they don't miss any work? But I bet a lot of people do. And then the second
bosses
one,
buy it for their employees,
which is more new. Oh, yeah, you're right. That's what it is. But it seems kind of directed towards like individuals too, like as a product. Like, and the second one, I don't even know what the product is because I've never watched it. But like, it starts off like this. It's like this tough guy voice, and he's like, "Good things come to those who work. So let's get to work." And then it's like all these shots, like people like fucking driving. I guess that's what working is these days.
Gotta drive to work.
What is this an advertisement for? Like, what? Advertisements are saying, "Let's get to work. Let's work." That's cool. Let's do some
I
work.
watched an analysis of this trend of not being able to tell what the ad is for.
Yeah.
And it's like a lot of the biggest, the baddest guys do that. The holding companies, the defense contractors, they just want you to have positive feelings associated with their brand. They don't need you to know what you're buying.
Yeah.
So that, like, although nobody ever goes to the store and is like, I really need some 3M tape. You know, they're just like, I want tape, and they don't care that 3M buys it, but they can recognize the brand and suddenly get dopamine.
I think that's why, like Northrop Grumman and all these companies are like sponsors of NPR.
Yeah.
Sure, exactly. Yeah.
And all of this came out of like behavioral psychology.
Like whenever you see the bad guy corporations commercials, like E-Corp in Mr. Robot, like though they are those commercials because it's it's a company that does everything, so they're not advertising any one thing. They're just like, our company, like it. Stop asking questions.
One of my favorite games, like that advertising is playing right now, is like an advertisement that's like really like just totally themed around the idea of being like inclusive and not racist, and then like every decision within that advertisement is still absolutely reinforces like racist tropes. Like one of the big ones I love is bank ads, where like you can have a black dude in a bank ad, but he can't be he can't be the one who's telling you this is the bank I use. Like the person on the like you've got Samuel L. Jackson, but he's not the one looking for a bank, and he's the one that's talking to the girl that's looking for a bank. Right, or like there's a really great Target one that's like about how like we're going to like make things everybody can afford, and like they have to show a black family. Then it wouldn't make sense if they showed a white family. And then at the end of that commercial,
people wouldn't like looking at the white family they have to show. Like you have to look really gross in order to be that white family.
And then like the end of that, I think that same commercial, they talk about how like everyone's beautiful, and then they show this light-skinned black girl with a shit ton of freckles, as if to say, we even think she's beautiful. That's how committed we are to inclusiveness. We even think that freak is beautiful. Like, what the fuck have we changed here?
Yeah.
Then I feel like all of those like really big, obviously like committee PR firm driven campaigns, they're all like that, where it's like they all contain all of the prejudices and have done nothing to like overthrow them.
Yep, this is an example of like getting like corporate funded sensitivity training, and then learning the right words to say, but not understanding why, and being like, okay, we're gonna put black people in our commercial, but like because they haven't identified or examined any of their ideas, they're like, okay, but we have to present them in the most racist way possible, so we literally have no idea how else to conceive of black people, etc., or people who aren't white. Whatever.
Yeah, the value is success in the marketplace. That's what all value is. And like racism can enter into it when that produces success in the marketplace, but there's no way to put that ahead of success in the marketplace. And so we get this, I mean, it's like we get the same fucking world, just with like a new advertisement for it.
Except like I can go to the bank now. It's the same, but
yeah, people
let me become a customer of their like predatory scheme.
Yeah. Oh, advertisements are just bonkers. Like, so many of them are about a person who's stupid, who's like so stupid that they love the product. It's like they're just openly contemptuous of the audience of the advertisement. And then there's always racial things coded in there too, where it's like you can't show a young black guy being a total fool in the kitchen. Like that won't fly. You got a fat white dude being a total fool in the kitchen. That's okay. Like there isn't like any startling stereotype breaking imagery in any of this stuff.
Yeah, what's interesting is that a lot of advertisements, especially for like insurance companies, appropriate the language of absurdity, of like sketch comedy, and even like the theater of the absurd, and that's really interesting for me to watch how that was absorbed into the world of advertising, where they start to, on the surface, try to have this appearance of like being an anti-advertisement, right? Because they understand that people, aren't going to fall for like a regular advertisement, but their attention will, be drawn in by a goofy, silly anti-advertisement that's cool, and then kind of seeing how that became so normal that kind of became a language of advertising. Like, if that makes sense.
Liberty Mutual has commercials which are the adventures of an emu and a character that they just ripped off of Saturday Night Live. To speak to sketch comedy.
It's 12:30.
Yeah, let's go.
And I gotta go soon.
You want to go and take it offline in a second?
Well, I have to go soon. I don't have a lot more time I can hang out on the computer, but I would like to talk about the thing we were going to talk about earlier. So if you guys also want to, I would suggest that we go offline and move to that conversation.
Yeah, I want to hear
I vote
this,
yes.
this stuff.
Bye,
And this is a
Internet.
great sacrifice to me because I had a really cool thing to say about metrics. And
Oh man.
we'll be back next week.
Yeah, we'll talk
2 weeks.
in 2 weeks. And we'll talk. We'll keep going on this chapter, right? Like Lemna.
I
Pretty
have
much
more to
got
say
there,
about
but-
this.
Let's do this and the next one. Let's plan to do 2 next time, and maybe
They go well together.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think we mostly got it, but I think we could revisit stuff if we need to.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Well, okay. So more Wolf. Goodbye, Johan and Sanic. If you're still in the mix, Sanic was there
Bye
for a second.
guys.
Yeah. Bye. We have to talk private now.